comment too.
So we should be live on the tube.
On the tube.
Yep. Excellent connection.
All right, let me...
Hey, YouTube. First stream on the...
Oh, I think it's working.
The new Just Browsin page. Or not Junior, but first live stream on YouTube.
Oh, I got the audio on. It's a little delayed, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be delayed because I put our latency down, so we're not like...
I just saw you wave.
Yeah, it's going to be delayed because I didn't put our latency down a little bit. First stream on YouTube. I'm Matthew, that's Zach. This is Just Browsin Podcast.
What up?
This will be episode 143. New year, new us, so we're going to be live streaming on YouTube, and this will be our first episode.
Should I do a little test comment in the chat?
Yeah.
See if it comes through?
Type it through. It's going to be weird seeing how delayed it is, though, because it is really delayed.
All right.
Boom, Zach Jones. Hello, Just Browsin Podcast.
Look at that. Look at that.
So, yeah, hopefully we'll get enough of a following that maybe we could do some like live Q&As. That'd be some fun episodes. And
yeah, I like that.
Do some stuff like that. So, first episode on YouTube, live streaming. And yeah, we're going to talk about the 2024 movie releases that Zach saw in theaters or on a streaming service, as well as, if I saw anything that he didn't see that year. So that's what we're talking about today. All right. Ready to go live on Audacity?
Let's do it, man.
All right. You want to do this intro?
Sure.
Okay.
Count me down.
3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Just Browsin Podcast. I'm your co-host, Zach, back again with Matt today. And we're here to do a 2024 look back at the movie releases from last year. Now, longtime listeners of this show will know how this format works. We utilize the same format for the movie flashbacks for a lot of times in years past, going back almost as much as a decade. But basically what this is a compilation of movies that... What I do at the end of each year is I put together a list of movies that I saw for that year that were released in that year, rank them on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, and then I come up with my top 5 for the year. And what that does is basically helps me out. I'm a movie nerd. I'm a fucking Excel nerd. So I have something I can go back to later on to then see, as the years go on, what my top 5 movies were for the year, look back on all the movies that I saw for those given years, see what I ranked them, see if my top 5s change over time. So it's kind of a fun exercise. So we have been doing these movie flashbacks for a while. This one is not really so much of a flashback, but just a kind of a recap of the last year's movies. So we did this same thing last January for the 2023 movies, where we had my lovely wife Taya on and our good friend Caleb. This year, it's just the two of us, so you guys are stuck with us. But we're going to go through a list of about 28 movies that I have on here. And I don't know, you may have plus or minus some of those. I don't know if you have any that aren't on here or not.
I did add 2.
Okay.
I put them at the bottom of the one on the screen.
Okay.
So this is just a sheet that I copied, and I put the 2 that I saw on the bottom.
Okay.
So yeah.
So yeah, we will go through these, and I think when we usually do these, what we do is we start from like the bottom of the list of like the worst ranked movies that I gave these movies from 1 to 5 stars, and we kind of work our way up to the top ones, and then we go over what our top 5s are going to be. So if you're listening to this too, this is the audio portion of this. We started like a little intro for the YouTube stream. We're kind of trying this new thing in 2025 where we're streaming live on YouTube, and kind of the hope for this is a multi-pronged thing of basically, one, the live streams give us the ability to interact live with listeners. People can hop in, watch the live streams as we're doing this, send us comments. We can live interact with the listeners. Right. Another thing is we can, in the future, we can kind of like clip fun moments, funny moments, insightful moments, whatever. Make little YouTube shorts,
the behind the
post
scenes
them on,
of us.
Yeah, on social media. Get some more interaction. Just a way to like build the podcast.
So if you want to follow, we are on Just Browsin with a space between on YouTube.
Yep.
So you
Shouldn't be too hard to find.
You can go see us as we talk. And then, like for today's episode, because it's a list, we do have the list that will be shown on screen as well. So if you want to get a visual idea of the list that we're talking about, you can at least see and follow along with the list. So be a little fun, change. We used to stream on Twitch, but now we're going to do it on YouTube and just see how this all goes. So yeah, hopefully off to a good start this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, longtime listeners will know we did try this. Was it last year or the year before through Twitch?
Oh, we used to stream through Twitch 2 or 3 years. It was a lot longer than.
Okay, so yeah, maybe it's been longer than I thought, but
longer than we thought. But we started having issues with Audacity, and I'm gonna go ahead and probably curse us. But it looks like we're already having issues with Audacity.
Oh, great.
So we'll have to do a listen back on the audio because you can see that there's been random areas without anything being spoken or said. But we'll make it all work, and you'll still get your beautiful 2024 movie release episode.
Well, and hopefully this live stream audio on the YouTube solves that problem as well. So anyway, working through some of the kinks, this will be something. I just did not enjoy this movie. It's just really bland, and there's not much to write home about. So that is Rebel Moon Part 2. I'm assuming.
So you want to know something real quick?
Yeah.
I forgot to set up the audio on the other fucking screen, and I just realized that.
What do you mean, for the YouTube?
So yeah, so you can see right here. We have an audio input, and I forgot to update it on this one. So I was like sitting here going, something's wrong. And yeah, we weren't capturing our audio. Yep.
That's our theme for the beginning of the year. Who knows if any of this audio is going to ever make it out?
Hey, we now have audio on this.
Well, we've only gone over one movie, and I basically trashed it. So, you've probably not seen that movie, correct?
No.
Okay. This next one I know you have, because you and I saw this in the theater when it came out, and that is a movie called Horizon: An American Saga Chapter 1. This is, of course, the Kevin Costner vehicle, his longtime passion project, a movie that he spent a considerable amount of his own personal fortune to make. He directed, wrote, and starred in this movie. It's a planned part 1 of 4, epic Western saga about, expansion of the West and post-Civil War America. I gave this 2 out of 5. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this because I don't know if we've had an extended conversation about this since we saw it. It did just hit streaming not that long ago. It was on Max. Right. It's now on Netflix.
Right.
I have not revisited it since we saw it in theaters. I just was not very impressed by this movie. I feel like you liked it more than I did.
I enjoyed it because I enjoy kind of like those old Western movies. And it's a saga, right? So you kind of got to go, or at least I went into it with this concept and idea that it's going to be a setup movie. And that's really what it was, right? It wasn't like some crazy, action-packed, what was it? Almost 3-hour-long movie, if not over 3 hours.
I think it's like about 3 hours, exactly, yeah.
So I kind of went into it with the expectations with tampered expectations to be like, this is a setup movie, right? We've got to build into what is going to be a 4 movie long story. And it's not like Star Wars necessarily where it's like bang, bang, quick hitting stories. This is like a full drawn out old school Western. And so I went into it with like the open mind of this is going to be a story and let's buy into it. Now, was it really long? And was there like, I think we had discussions, and I was like, yeah, there's certain pieces of this that you could have taken out and no one would have ever noticed. And if it was maybe 2 hours and 30, like 2.5 hours, even just that extra half hour less, I think people would have enjoyed it a lot more. It was just really long to sit there without much action in the story going on. It was just a good story, but not a lot of hard action that you're kind of like, expecting out of a Western. But
yeah,
I think it was a good build up into hopefully a good build up into part 2. But it's not necessarily good news when part 2's been delayed. But then I've heard there's a lot of things that is more the timing with when it was going to be released. They didn't expect it to do good because there were other movies being released at the same time that were going to blow it out of the water. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things like, I enjoyed it. I haven't gone back and watched it. I will before part 2 comes out, and I don't know if we'll go see part 2 in theaters, if they even release it in theaters. Mm-hmm. If they do, I'm sure I'll probably be interested to go see it in theaters.
So to that point about the release of the second one, so I'm looking back on the list, and anyone who has been a longtime listener of this podcast probably heard our 2024 anticipated movie release episode we did around like February or March of 2024. I put together a list of all of the movies that we were excited for, and on that release radar, so at the beginning of the year, at the time that we put that list together and we were doing that episode, Horizon: An American Saga Part 1 released on June 28th, which that came out in theaters on time. We went and saw it, the whole 9. Horizon: An American Saga Chapter 2 was due to be released on August 16th, the same day that Alien Romulus released. So that never ended up happening. anyone who follows this sort of stuff knows that after the first one dropped, it made like basically no money in the theaters. Like no one went to go see it, which I don't think, looking back on it, should have been too much of a surprise to anyone, considering this is a 3-hour-long Western with not a ton of action in it,
right,
and part one of a presumed to be 4-part story. The market for that's like the movie-going demographic for that sort of a movie is not very big to begin with. So I don't know if that was necessarily a huge shock to me personally. It might have been a shock to some people. But that definitely negatively affected the release schedule of the second one, because they totally pulled it off the release schedule. It had a debut. I was Googling this just the other day, like 2 days ago, because I was curious. I was like, what's happening with the second one? Are we ever going to see this? And it debuted at like the Venice Film Festival. So it is a completed movie and has debuted at a festival. It just has not been distributed widely to audiences in theaters or on streaming. So it kind of remains to be seen what's going to happen with that. Now,
I'd assume it'll be released.
I would assume at least the second one is going to be released. I don't know for sure how far he is into making 3 and 4, or if like the reception of 1 and 2 were kind of like 3 and 4 are dependent on the reception of 1 and 2.
Right.
I really am curious if we ever get the full completed 4-part vision, which I think would be a shame considering Kevin Costner's personal investment in all of this, and like considering everything that happened too with, I think a large part of why he left this massive, show Yellowstone on Paramount is because of he wanted to go work on this Project Horizon. It's this passion project of his. So I think it would kind of suck that, the poor financial results, the box office results of 1 and 2 would hinder him from being able to release 3 and 4. Because to your point, I think a lot of my problems with this movie are it feels like so much of a setup. I mean, you sit down, you watch a 3-hour-long Western, and it ends and you're kind of like, it was just getting started on all of these different storylines. You're like, oh, now I'm like kind of into this and I want to see where these characters are. And then it's like, oh, you got to come back for the second one. It's like, okay, I feel like I got blue-balled for 3 hours. But I will say this. One generous thing that I will say about this movie, because I did not enjoy it as much as I wanted to enjoy it. I wanted to enjoy this movie a lot. I think Kevin Costner's character's part in the movie is far and away the best part of the whole movie.
Yeah.
In my opinion. When he's in the movie, his character, I forget his character's name, but fantastic. Like, I love those parts of the movie. I think there's just other parts that drag a little bit, and he's doing so much setup that this may all pay off in a really awesome way later. Right. We just haven't seen that
well,
yet,
and then that, part of it could be that he saw that and that was the feedback he got. So maybe he went in and re-edited some parts in the second one to kind of speed it up a bit in terms of at least maybe more action and more tying some of the storylines together. Because, it started to get to where you're like, okay,
yeah,
all right. And then all of a sudden it just like classic Western just cuts to the credits and you're like,
oh, that's it,
I
guess,
man. Like now I'm actually ready to enjoy this. So maybe that played a part in them delaying the release, was just they wanted to make a little bit extra, changes to it and be like, this might catch more people. I mean, I know the first one didn't do good, but I also kind of want to know, like when they were filming like the Lord of the Rings, right? They were filming 1, 2, and 3. Like they were already filming.
There was already
everything.
A plan to do it all. Yeah.
So he clearly has a plan to do all of it. So I'm wondering how much of Chapter 1's budget is also part of, possibly 2, 3, and 4, or at least part of 2.
Yeah.
So he made back, I think it was like $33 million or something was the box office numbers. So he made back some of the money because I think it was like $54 million budget. Mm-hmm. But it's like you can't operate at a negative $21 million deficit for 4 movies.
Well, and especially he personally has so much stake in this movie where it's not like a studio has put up the money for this movie. It's like some of it is from, studios or outside investors, and then a lot of it is just his own personal wealth.
Right.
So he's like literally invested in this financially, in the success of this movie. I don't know. It's fine. Again, I think I was actually, the reason I gave it a 2 out of 5 is I was just disappointed in what I thought it could be. Also, one thing I was going to mention, do you remember how that movie ended? It just abruptly goes into this like 3.5 minute long extended trailer for like the next movie.
Yeah.
And when it was happening in the theater, I was like, "What are we watching? What's
like,
happening?
was this
right
a
now?"
mistake?
Like, yeah, I'm like, and it's just like scenes and like kind of an extended sneak peek of like what's to come, and then it goes to credits, and you're like, "What?" So that was like a little like trailer at the end of the movie, but that was the ending of the movie. It was really jarring to watch.
It just might not have been the most well planned out ending of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just felt like it would have been nice to have like a, cut to black credits and some sort of a title card of like, stay tuned next for Horizon Part 2, and then show that. Because it was just so jarring for it to be like, you're in the movie, and then there's these scenes of things that are happening in the future, and you're like, what the fuck am I watching?
Like the flashcards just going off.
Yeah, I'm confused by this. So anyway, just an interesting experience. I am very curious to see Part 2, and maybe Part 2 is awesome. Who knows? Like maybe Part 2, whenever it does get released, is like, holy shit, give this man some more money to make 3 and 4 if he hasn't been shooting it already. So we'll see. This next movie, I don't think you've seen this, have you? It's Joker Folie à Deux. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. I won't harp on this too much. This got very, very, very negative reviews.
I heard it was awful.
You can go online and read as many reviews as you would like. This movie was pretty much universally panned. The one thing I will say about this is one of the most confounding movies I've ever seen, in that it is like actively trying to get you to not like it as a movie. And I don't know if it's some sort of like a statement on behalf of the creators involved in making this movie, but Joker in 2019 is this behemoth billion-dollar R-rated movie that gets nominated for Best Picture.
Like the greatest R-rated movie ever.
Wins the actor or the Oscar for Best Actor for his portrayal as Joker in the first movie. It's one of the most harrowing portrayals of mental health illness gone awry I've ever seen. It's an incredibly dark but really well done movie. And then they come back and do this sequel, and everything that I was hearing leading up to it is it's going to be a musical. And I'm like, what the fuck does a Joker musical look like? I can't even picture that in my head. And then I hear they cast Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, and I'm like, well, if you're going to do a musical, having Lady Gaga in your movie seems like a good idea.
That's a good pick.
We know she can sing. We saw Star is Born. She's fucking great in that movie. And then I was all excited to like go. I remember texting the movie club being like, you guys want to go see Joker Folie à Deux this weekend? And then like a couple days went by and I texted everyone and I was like, the early reviews on this are horrible.
Yeah.
I was like, it's kind of giving me pause. And like none of us ended up going. I finally caught it on Max when they put it on Max a couple months after the release. It's not a good movie, dude. It's so strange. It's like it's trying to be a musical, but they don't lean into the musical side of it. So like none of the musical numbers are very good or interesting, and they're all kind of like half singing but not really singing. They don't use Lady Gaga hardly at all. She's barely in the movie. And then there's this the only thing that I liked about this movie is at the very, very end. I won't spoil it for anyone who does want to watch this ridiculous movie, but they make a decision about the character of Arthur Fleck at the end of the movie that I think is actually pretty interesting. But that's like the last 5 minutes of the movie. Everything else, there's like a courtroom. There's a long extended courtroom drama. It was just
a money grab is what you're talking about.
It's so weird, dude. But like, if it was a money grab, you think they would have made it better. It's almost like they were intentionally trying to make the worst version of this movie they could to piss everyone off. It's so strange, dude. Like, I cannot describe it to you without you just watching it and being like, what were they doing with this movie?
Yeah, I won't waste my time with it.
I would not waste your time unless you just want to watch a movie that is like I said, completely confounding and you're just like, what the fuck were they thinking with this? Wouldn't recommend it. So I would stick with the first one. The first one is actually a legitimately fantastic movie. Next up is another movie I gave 2 out of 5 stars. This is the Stephen King Salem's Lot adaptation, the most recent adaptation. This dropped directly to Max sometime in October. I watched this as kind of like spooky season month. It's a pretty bland, not very interesting adaptation of Salem's Lot, which is a book that is like one of my favorite Stephen King books. I've never seen any of the prior adaptions, but this movie is just not very good. It lacks a lot of the character depth and story depth of the book.
Never even heard of it.
And it's, I wouldn't go
Stephen King, I wouldn't care anyways.
It's like a vampire story. So I don't know. You might be into it, but it's not a good version of this. I hear that there was a better version of it done prior, like decades ago. So like a lot of Stephen King adaptations, this is like adaptation
The
number
non-good
2 or
one.
3, and it's just doesn't happen to be very good. So, not spending a ton of time on that one. Let's move on to The Watchers, which is another one that I gave 2 out of 5 stars. This is M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, one of his daughters, actually. He has another daughter who was an actress in another movie that we'll be talking about coming up here in a couple minutes from last year. But his daughter wrote and directed this movie. It's an adaptation of a novel, and it's got a very intriguing premise, basically about like these people who get lost in these woods in like Ireland or somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where they're at. But you kind of go into these woods, supernatural stuff starts happening, you get lost, you can't find your way out, there's no cell service, weird things start happening with like compasses and phones and all that. And it's just, there's clearly some sort of supernatural presence going on in the woods. And this main character basically gets lost out there. She's on her way to travel to meet someone. She gets lost out there, and it's getting dark, and she's lost in these woods. Her car broke down. She's wandering around, and she can't find a way out. And she starts hearing these like monster noises essentially in the woods, and they're like chasing after her. And then she comes across this big building, which has like an all glass see-through side of it. And this old woman opens the door and is like, you need to come in here right now or you're going to die, basically. So she sprints in there. The lady shuts the door behind her and like locks it. And then they go on to explain that there's these creatures in the woods that come every night. And what they want to do is watch the people who are like trapped in this thing. So this little box has like a living room. There's a TV, a couch, a table. There's like food in there. They can hang out and stuff, but they have to, every night, they have to all stand in a row and like face looking out. They can't, it's a two-way mirror. So like, or I guess a one-way mirror. So they can't see out. It's like a wall to them, but outside you can see in. It's like a clear glass. And they don't know. So the whole mystery of the whole thing is you can't, it's all shot from the point of view of the people who are stuck inside. So you're hearing these noises of these monsters outside, and they're like presumably watching you, but you can't see them. You don't know what they look like and anything. Very intriguing premise. I thought it dropped the bag pretty hard towards the end, but I see what she's going for. It's a very M. Night Shyamalan-esque sort of like, there's something supernatural going on, and I know there's going to be a twist. I just don't know what that twist is going to be. So this is his daughter's, I believe, her first movie that she's directed. She worked on this show on Apple TV Plus called, I'm spacing on the name right now. I'll look it up here. Servant. It's called Servant on Apple TV Plus, which is actually a pretty good kind of twisty thriller show. So she's clearly like working her way up, becoming a bigger and bigger director. But this is a 2 out of 5. I wouldn't go out of your way to check it out. Like I said, that it's a very intriguing premise that kind of fumbles the bag towards the end.
Classic.
Next up is Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, which I guess you're always supposed to just say Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. Godzilla and Kong. I don't know. It's kind of a weird title. Did you see this one?
No, I've kind of Godzilla and Kong. They just keep abusing both of those characters and making more and more and more and more and more, and I'm just like, I'm over it.
Yeah,
I like King Kong Skull or the one with like Jack Black and
the one from like 2005 or whatever.
Right,
yeah,
the like 18-hour long one
Peter
that was
Jackson
like
one. That's a good movie.
amazing.
I like that movie.
Besides the terrifying bugs when they all fall into the trench, that was probably the most terrifying thing ever.
We've talked about that before. I have like
I'm
actual PTSD from that.
Cannibal tribe, T-Rex, massive gorilla.
I can handle all.
I can handle all that. Fall into a massive pit with big old bugs. I'm good.
No, I will not be getting eaten alive by giant bugs.
Please
no,
just
thanks.
bite my head off right away, or do something I die immediately. But no, I have no desire to see.
I wouldn't go out of your way. The only thing I'll say about this is this was like a March release, and during its release on the movie release calendar last year, it was kind of a like movie fans were very much welcoming this movie because it's very silly and very dumb, but it's very fun. Like it's a fun action romp of a movie, and these I feel like they've kind of, because this is a continuation in the little series they've done where there was a Godzilla remake, there was Kong Skull Island. There was a Godzilla versus Kong. There was a Godzilla King of the Monsters, I think. And then this one. So, I don't know, 5 or 6 of these now. It's kind of the culmination of a lot of this. And I don't know if they're continuing to make these or not.
Probably.
They look like they get more and more ridiculous. I've seen all of them now at this point.
I mean, there's 10 Fast and Furious, so why not make 10?
And they're really not good. They're actually pretty not good, but they're fun. It's like
the Meg, where you're like, I'm going to be entertained for 2 hours, and I'm going to laugh, and then I'm going to be like, I'm not watching that again, though.
Like, we've talked about it before, and it's like, I'm not above watching giant robots and giant monsters destroy cities, or like a giant shark eat a bunch of people.
Just the most action-packed movie with no storyline, just ridiculous things happening.
I don't care.
Like,
I'm gonna, like, it's a nice way to spend 2 hours. And just
you killed 2 hours of my day, and I was like, that was entertaining for those 2 hours.
Yeah. So I think this one was also big with families. Like, if you had kids, this was probably a great movie to take them to. But anyway, outside of that, I can't really highly recommend this one. The next one up is another one that I gave 2.5 out of 5, and this is a movie called Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This is the latest in the long-running Apes franchise that goes back to, I think, like the 60s, probably.
Yeah, I think the first ones were mid to late 60s.
Yeah, this franchise goes back a long way. This is sort of a continuation. It's not a full reboot of the franchise. It's a partial reboot, but it's a continuation in the same storyline of the Caesar trilogy that they did, which I think is actually a fantastic trilogy, especially the second and the third one. The movies where Andy Serkis played Caesar. This one, the reason I gave it 2.5 out of 5 is this was such a letdown to me. It's not a bad movie, but I think coming off of War for the Planet of the Apes, which was the culmination of the previous trilogy, this was just not what I wanted to see. And they're trying to introduce some new characters, obviously. I thought the villain was really good, and I thought they had some setup for some potential, like the climax of the movie being pretty awesome, and it just didn't quite hit the way I wanted it to. But very clearly at the end of it, setting up for a sequel. It would not surprise me if there's a new trilogy that this is the start of. But this one was a big letdown to me. So 2.5 out of 5. Next up is A Quiet Place Day 1. And I don't think you've seen this either, have you? Have you seen any of the Quiet Place movies?
I've seen the first one now.
What'd you think of it?
It's interesting. It's not something that like catches my I wasn't excited about. Probably because I'd die right away because I just could care less to be quiet.
One of the most difficult post-apocalyptic scenarios to survive in, I feel like.
I'd be like sitting in the restaurant, like minding my own business, and be like, and they'd just look at me and be like, I deserved it.
Well, and all it takes is like a squeaky chair, like we lean back and these chairs make noise. You're done. You're done.
Just comes through my ceiling just with the face.
You know what I think about a lot is my joints crack a lot. Even when I'm not trying to.
Every time I bend my knee, it pops.
Yeah, knees, ankles, my big toes snap a lot when I'm like walking upstairs. I'm like, I would be so fucked.
They're like, be quiet. It's like, okay, what I'm going to need you to do is amputate my legs at my hip, cut my arms off at my shoulder.
I can't do anything about this, man. I'm just walking, and it's my joints are making noise.
You just like take a step, it's like, and it just turns and looks at you, and you're just like, the first one was okay. I've seen YouTube shorts on this one, but it's one of those things that I'm just not like attracted to in terms of watching.
So the first one and the second one, two of my favorite like alien invasion post-apocalyptic movies ever. I thought the first one was like truly fantastic, and the second one's really good too. This one, not so much. I went back and looked at what I rated the previous two movies, because the previous two have come out like within the last 5 to 10 years. And I rated this one appropriately lower. So I think 3 out of 5 is fair. It plays with an interesting premise in that we're going backwards in the timeline, and it's a prequel, and it's like what happened the day these aliens arrived. Like, what was all of the chaos in people figuring out that they can't see and they're hunting by noise. Very great idea for a premise. I just don't think it's quite as good as the other two. I still think it's a very fun movie. I had a fun time watching it. Taya and I went and watched this in the theaters. And it's, I think it's Lupita Nyong'o is the star, and then Joseph Quinn, who actually plays one of the twin emperors from Gladiator 2, the one who didn't have syphilis. He's in this movie as well, opposite Lupita Nyong'o, and they kind of like find each other in this New York that's being ravaged by aliens and try and survive together. And it's, I think the characters in the movie are really good, and the acting's awesome, and the suspense and the action is pretty good. it's just it just doesn't quite reach the levels of filmmaking I think that the first and the second one does.
Right.
So 3 out of 5. Next one up is a movie called Carry On. This is like a brand new release. This came out right around Christmas on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. Have you seen this one?
Not yet. I do want to watch it. I just haven't. I haven't watched it yet. I started my Harry Potter rewatch, so I'm in on Harry Potter right now.
Gotcha. I think you'd really like this movie, and I think a lot of people. I think most people who watch this movie are going to enjoy it. I think it's like the perfect Netflix algorithm movie in that, you know how like Netflix has sort of built their model on like, especially with their TV shows, every episode ends in such a way that you're like, I have to see what happens next. I got to click next. Like that's their algorithm working. It's like Amazon. Anytime you click on anything, even just to view it, you don't have to buy it. They're like, if you like this, what about all these other things? And they're just like spoon feeding you products to buy. That's kind of how Netflix is, but with content. And I think Carry On is like the epitome of a Netflix algorithm movie in that it's just a very fun, propulsive action thriller about a guy who basically, you've seen the trailer for it, right?
TSA agent.
TSA agent who's basically being blackmailed into letting a bag go through security that has some sort of
he can't
destructive
open it,
material.
can't do anything.
Yeah.
He just has to let it go through.
And Jason Bateman is just absolutely cooking as the villain in this movie. Really good role for him. Love Jason Bateman. It's a solid 3 out of 5. It's not like going to blow your socks off, but you're going to be thoroughly entertained. It's
going to be
2
entertaining.
hours. Yeah. So I think a shit ton of people have watched this already on Netflix, and I think a lot more people are going to get to it. If you have Netflix, if you're looking for something to fire up and just kill your evening, watch Carry On. I think you're thoroughly going to enjoy yourself.
I've been wanting to watch it. I just haven't found the 2 hours to actually watch it.
Yeah. Well, once you're done with your annual Harry Potter binge, check this one out. Next up is another movie that you and I saw in theaters. This is called Deadpool and Wolverine. I gave this 3 out of 5. Do you think that's an appropriate rating? What would you give that movie? I know we did like a whole episode, or I guess half an episode on this earlier in our podcasting career, but
again, it's very well noted I'm a big Deadpool guy.
Right.
Deadpool 1, I don't think anything will beat that in terms of Deadpool movies. I thought Deadpool and Wolverine was an entertaining movie, but it didn't like knock my socks off to where I was like, I got to buy that or I got to watch that again like immediately. Like it wasn't. Yeah. It was entertaining. I was entertained. There weren't any parts I'm just like, man, this is like stupid. Like it was action packed, classic Deadpool. I think it broke the record for how many times they said fuck in a Disney movie, which was, I think it was like 37 times or 38 times in that movie. And there was only been one other time ever in any other Disney movie. It was entertaining, but yeah, it wasn't anything like I had high expectations because we were bringing Logan back.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought it was interesting the way they did it. Like, I think the story was decent, but it was just kind of one of those things that it just didn't like. I had it in high regards going into it, and it didn't hit where I thought. I mean, again, entertaining, but just I had it up here and it kind of hit mid. So I'd say I would say 3 to 3.5 would be pretty fair.
Okay. I was curious. I know we did a whole episode on this, so I won't go into like long.
I mean, my biggest thing with it is like
on it, but
after we watched it in July, I haven't had like that. I want to watch it again,
which says a lot.
Type desire. So
I actually have thought about. It's on Disney Plus now. I've thought about revisiting it. I just haven't yet. But without going into like a long dissertation, because you can go back on our podcast feed and we crunched in one episode. We did this movie and Alien Romulus. So if you want to hear some longer drawn out thoughts on this movie, go listen to that episode. I will say my like sort of brief reaction to this movie is I had fun in the theater and have not really thought a lot about it since. And it also had simultaneously a lot going on with the plot and nothing going on with the plot. Like there's a lot of story and no story happening at the same time, in that there's so much going on, but when you leave it and you start thinking about it, you're like, I thought that was going to be a more impactful movie to the MCU moving forward, and it just kind of isn't. It's just kind of like a fun little adventure over here with Deadpool and Wolverine that like actually doesn't mean anything, and it didn't set up any big villains moving forward, none of that kind of stuff. So I was like, not what I was expecting. Kind of thought there would be something else in there, but I had fun while I was in the theater. again, you're a huge Deadpool fan. I'm a huge Wolverine fan. I had a lot of trepidation going in. I talked about this on our other episode about coming off of Logan, Hugh Jackman's retirement from the character. That's such a great fucking movie. I was very anti him coming back and doing it. I think the way they did it was like the best way they could have done it without like ruining the legacy of that movie.
Right. I think it was well done in that regard. And like I said, it was entertaining, but it just didn't meet. I don't think it met anyone's expectations. Maybe the box offices, but other than that, no one else's.
We did predict early in the year that it was going to make a shit ton of money, and
right.
that it did. So that was not a huge surprise. But I think I gave it 3 out of 5. I think that's pretty fair. Next up is a movie called Juror Number 2. I gave this 3 out of 5. This was a kind of under the radar movie that dropped towards the end, like later part of the year. I think like in November. It came onto Max, I think, within weeks of
I've seen
of the movie release.
Either Max or Netflix was where I've been seeing a lot.
And that's where I watched it. Like it dropped in theaters, and then within like 4 or 5 weeks, it was already on Max. Right. So I was like, huh, okay. So
it's because you don't have to hear the coming soon to Blu-ray and DVD.
Right. So this movie was not on my radar at all, and I was listening to some end of the year like big movie release reaction podcasts. And some people were mentioning, they're like, this is a new Clint Eastwood movie. And this is just kind of flying under the radar. Like Clint Eastwood, Hollywood legend, big time director.
912 years old.
93 years old or however old he is. He's got a new movie coming out and like no one's talking about it. Kind of weird. So I checked it out because I heard some like positive reviews about it. And I enjoyed this. I thought it was pretty good. It's got Nicholas Hoult as the star, and it's got a really, really, really good premise. And I don't know if you know what the premise is or not, but it's essentially a guy gets selected for jury duty, and the case is basically like a manslaughter or like a murder case where basically a year prior to when this trial is taking place, the suspect or the guy who is under investigation, who's been charged with this manslaughter, was at a bar, like a country western bar, with his girlfriend. Witnesses saw them fighting. They were both drunk. They go off. They leave the bar. It's like dark. It's raining. She just walks off. They have this big fight in the parking lot, according to witnesses. She walks off down the road. He then gets in his car and drives away. Well, next thing you know, she turns up dead about a half mile down the road, and her body is found over this bridge at the bottom of this like sort of dried up creek bed ravine, smashed up on some rocks, and she's dead. And he is the prime suspect. He gets arrested, charged with her murder. So this main character, Nicholas Holt's character, gets called for jury duty. Well, he comes in. He doesn't know what the case is about, obviously, until everything gets started. Right. He gets selected for jury duty. He goes through the whole selection process. And he very quickly realizes he might be the one who actually killed her. Because a year ago, on the same night, leaving the same bar, he was there, and he's in recovery. He's a former alcoholic, and he was there that night, and he was about to have a drink, but he didn't. Or it's unclear throughout the movie whether or not he was drinking. He gets in his car, leaves. Again, it's dark, pouring rain. He's got the windshield wipers, going crazy. He hits something that he doesn't see, like his phone. Someone texts him. He looks down for just a second. He hits something, gets out of his car. He's looking around. There's nobody. There's a sign for like deer crossing. So he's like, well, maybe I hit a deer. He's looking around. He can't see anything. It's like pitch black. It's raining. He looks over the edge of the bridge. It's just pitch black down there. He can't see anything. And he just figures, well, fuck it. It must have been a deer. Gets in his car and drives away. And now here he is serving for jury duty. And as they're presenting facts of this case, he's like, fuck, was that me? Like, did I kill her? And if I did, should I say something? Sort of thing.
No, then you just become the juror who goes, he's not guilty.
Yeah. So then
none of this points to him.
So the whole movie is about this court case and the jury deliberating over whether or not they think this guy who's actually on the stand is guilty.
Meanwhile, the real murderer is in the room.
It's a very good premise. I have a lot of questions about the ending in terms of how our legal system works and whether or not he would even be liable for anything. Just if you want to watch it, I think there's a lot of stuff we could break down.
The way our legal system works is like you post something on social media, you get arrested for 6 years, but you could go, murder 1,000 people, and they're like, an hour of community service.
Yeah, I think the American judicial system is far from perfect. But if you like Clint Eastwood movies, me personally, I know I've talked about on this podcast before, a lot of his movies that he's directed in the last 10 to 15 years have not been my cup of tea and have been really boring. This one I found to be one of the better ones that I've seen him do in recent years. So worth checking out. I think it's on Max right now if you want to go watch it. This next movie up is a movie that we also saw together in theaters. This is a movie called Monkey Man. And we also did an episode on this podcast where we shared further thoughts on this movie. We did that with Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, Monkey Man, and then Civil War. I think we did all three of those on one episode.
Yeah, I believe so.
If you want to hear more thoughts on Monkey Man, go listen to that episode. But I enjoyed this movie. I gave this 3 out of 5. This is Dev Patel's directorial debut. He stars in this as like a pretty convincing, badass, like John Wick action hero. I like this movie. It was good.
Yeah, I mean, I think my thoughts are, like you said, we have our episode out there about this. So go give that a listen if you want a more in-depth analysis on it. Another entertaining movie, but one of those things where you're kind of like I think I nitpicked a little more, saying like it could have been so much better if they went this way with certain things, or like, and entertaining. But I mean, if I'm gonna watch that, I think I would just rather watch John Wick.
Yeah, it's just a better done version of that.
Right.
I think you and I talked about it, and we really liked it, but we thought it was a little clunky, and it's probably because this is his directorial debut. Right. I think it's a very promising debut. I just think it's not as like well done as you would like it to be. There's some kinks in there a little bit, but I thought it was pretty fucking good. Pretty entertaining.
I thought it was a very entertaining movie. I wasn't disappointed that I spent money to see that at all.
Yeah, there's some parts of it that drag a little bit, that get a little slow, but I thought the action was great.
I think me and you were the only two from the movie club that saw that.
I think we were. Yeah, I think that was just you and me.
Bunch of losers.
Yeah, they missed out. I enjoyed that movie. Next up is a movie called Trap. Now, I just mentioned this a few minutes ago when we were talking about The Watchers. So, The Watchers was directed by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. Trap was directed by Shyamalan himself. This is a movie that has a lot of flaws that I thoroughly enjoyed. This is a 3 out of 5. This is starring... dude, I hate when this happens on the podcast. Every time I go to like describe a director or an actor, I will fucking just blank on their name like right as I'm about to say it. It's a really cruel trick that my brain does to me. I mean, I do have IMDb pulled up real quick. I want to say the actor's name because he was also in Oppenheimer. Josh Hartnett is the name of the star of this. Another great premise. 2024 was the year of movies with like awesome premises that didn't necessarily capitalize on all the potential.
The what could have been.
The what could have been.
It was
movies.
the year of what could have been. Well, which is funny because another plug of one of our old episodes, our 2024 movie release preview, we were like, what are we going to talk about? Because there was maybe 5 to 7 really movies we were like, all right, we're pretty hyped about. We ended up seeing a lot more, I feel like, than we were expecting.
And it was weird. It's kind of like a double-edged sword because on the one hand, it was a bummer that the release radar was so thin. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, because it's so thin, we can go see like all of these if we want because there's not that many of them. It's not like there's 70 movies coming out.
It's not like Barbenheimer where we have to go see 2 in one day.
Right, yeah. So that was kind of what allowed me to see so many of these is like there was just only like one every month or two that I was really excited about. I kind of mentioned, great concept and great setup for a movie. This is basically the Josh Hartnett M. Night Shyamalan movie where his character takes his daughter to a Taylor Swift-esque concert. Once they get there, there's all of this security. He starts talking to one of the security guards or one of the event staff, and he asks them like, "Hey, what's going on? What's with all of the extra security?" And they're like, "Oh, there's this serial killer known as the Butcher. The FBI, the feds got a tip that he's going to be here today." So they set up this concert as a trap, and like no one can get out without being screened. And the big twist that is revealed in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler to say this.
I was going to say.
The twist is that he is the Butcher.
Right.
He's the serial killer. So then it becomes this game of like, how's he going to get out of this concert without being caught? And he's there with his daughter and this whole thing. Really fun. I think it kind of falls apart a little bit towards the later like third of the movie. I had a lot of fun with it though. I think it's a 3 out of 5.
I was gonna watch that, and then I was just like, nah, I'm not.
It
wasn't like catching my my attention.
It's one of those
anymore.
ones where like it's on Max, I think, right now, and same thing with like a Carry On or Juror Number 2. It's like a 3 out of 5 movie. Like I think if you watch it, you're not going to be upset that you watched it,
but you're not going to be like, I gotta watch it.
Holy
again.
shit, that was great! Yeah,
Right.
it's like it's fine. This next movie up is the last one of the 3 out of 5 star category. It's a movie called Wolves. And I don't know if you heard about this, but I
have not heard about it.
It was a direct to Apple TV Plus movie. It was an Apple TV Plus production, starring George Clooney and Brad Pitt as like fixers, basically. So, like real quick setup, it was basically like a powerful woman. I think she's some sort of a district attorney or something like that. Is partying in her room with like a young guy who appears to be like a drug dealer or a stripper, and they're like fucked up. He, through this freak accident, dies in her room. He like falls, hits his head, dies. She's obviously married, has a family. She's a district attorney. She's like, I cannot be found in this room with a dead body, like a dead, hooker essentially.
Right.
And so she makes a call. Some other guys make a call, and George Clooney shows up, and he's like, I'm a fixer. I'm here to like make your problem go away, essentially. And within him being there, within like, 15 minutes of him being there, Brad Pitt shows up at the door, dressed almost the same exact way, saying almost the same exact things, and is like, I'm here to fix your problem. And she's like, well, I thought that's what he was doing. and it's the same director who has done the most recent like Tom Holland Spider-Man trilogy. I think his name's John Watts. And it's basically like a comedy action like duo movie with George Clooney and Brad Pitt as like these fixers. And of course, the plan to make this problem go away turns into a shit show. And obviously it's like over the course of one long night, everything goes wrong. Pretty entertaining. This one got like really shit on by a lot of the critics that I listened to. I enjoyed my time with it. It's another one that I think like if you watched it on Apple TV Plus, if you have that at home, you're not going to be mad that you watched it.
Right.
I think if I saw that in theaters, I'd be a little let down, but I had a good time with it. So, 3 out of 5 for that. We are now moving into the 3.5 out of 5 star range. And the first one up is Gladiator 2, which is a movie that I know you've seen because we watched together. Do you have this more highly rated, less highly rated than 3.5? What are your thoughts? I know we just did like an entire episode on this, so
I need to rewatch it, which I think it's already out on Prime. You can already buy it on Prime.
I think you can.
Or maybe even watch it on Prime for free. Skewed going into it because we were absolutely hungover.
We talked about that on our episode.
I was not feeling very good.
Neither was I.
So it caught my attention. I mean, it did a good job of entertaining me, and I remember a lot of it, and it was a good movie. I need to watch it not being hungover to like really kind of digest it. But yeah, I mean, I'll definitely revisit it. It's definitely a movie I want to rewatch. It caught my attention. I think there were good storylines. I also think, again, we don't need to go too in depth because we have a episode a couple weeks ago on it. But yeah, I would say 3.5 to 4 would be a good range. It was just, It's one of those that was like, it was really entertaining. I did like the storylines for the most part on it, but of course I'm always going to be like, well, you could have done this different or this different, looking back at it. But the only downside of it is Gladiator's such an iconic movie.
It's such a masterpiece. Yeah.
That it's almost one of those like, and we've said this multiple times on multiple episodes about multiple movies or TV shows. Sometimes you can ruin a masterpiece by making a sequel.
Yeah.
I don't think they ruined.
Agreed. I don't think they ruined the
Gladiator at all.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things. And I touched on the how do you make a Gladiator sequel? Like,
right.
Gladiator was literally built around one character who we know dies at the end of Gladiator.
Yeah, it's like open and shut.
How
case.
can you make? Yeah. So my biggest thing was, and I said this on our episode, was if they named it something different, like Gladiator, something else story.
Yeah.
To where you're going like, oh, okay, it's going to be around the same time frame as Gladiator, but it's a different story. I probably would have felt way different about it just because it's not Gladiator 2. Because you go into Gladiator 2, you're going, this is a direct sequel.
Right.
And then you're kind of like, oh, like, without spoiling it because it is a fresh movie. It is technically a direct sequel. Like,
oh, yeah.
It's a full-on sequel, but, Yeah, I would say 3.5 to 4 would be fair.
I don't know if I told you, I did go revisit this because Taya hadn't seen it, and she actually really wanted to watch it, so I took her to go see it, and she liked it quite a bit. So it's a little bit more fresh in my head than you probably, because I've seen it within the last couple of weeks. But I said this on our episode that we did. When we first saw it, I think we were all our reaction was a little bit muted, and we were all kind of like, yeah, it was all right, it was fine. And then, like, in the days after that, I was thinking about it more, and I'm like, that was a pretty good movie, actually. There's a lot to like about that movie. And I think...
I was just about to throw up for the last 2
I
hours.
was just brutally hungover, and that was hurting me.
Throbbing headache.
Yeah. And after seeing it again, I think 3.5 out of 5 is fair. If Gladiator 1 is a 5 out of 5...
Yeah.
This is like a 3.5, 4 out of 5, I think.
Yeah, I would say you could go like 3.5 to 4.
Yeah.
Pretty easy.
Because there is a lot to enjoy. I just don't think it meets the highs of the original.
Right.
Which is, that's hard to do. It's
right.
Gladiator is one of the best movies
And if you took away Gladiator as a movie and this was just Gladiator 2 without a comparison, it might be a 4 to 4.5 star.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's just, again... You're comparing it to the original, and sometimes it does these movies a disservice, and sometimes these movies do the originals massive disservices. I don't think this one really did either. I just think it was...
It's
I mean, the casting, I think, was probably the best they could have done.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, I think the storylines were great. It just was like a few things that you could have done with or without, and... Yeah. So
I also think
I enjoyed it.
Denzel is just so great in this movie. He's like the best part of this movie.
That was one of his best roles, I think, in recent movies.
It's really just great. I mean, Denzel's great in everything, but he's fucking great in this movie. Next up is a movie called Longlegs, which I know for a fact you did not see because this is a horror movie.
Yep, no.
This was I hesitate to say underseen movie because I think within the horror community, this was a pretty popular release this year. But it's a Nicolas Cage starring movie about a serial killer called Longlegs, and I don't want to say more about it because this is a very unique experience. This is a very unique horror movie. I would not say this is scary in the way that like a Conjuring is scary, but it is supremely creepy and disturbing. Like it's
like a Disturbia.
It's a way different feel. So it's hard to describe it more without going into more of the plot mechanics, but let's just say that Nicolas Cage puts forth one of the most disturbing performances of a creepy serial killer that I have ever seen in the history of cinema. It's very, very interesting. He's going for a certain vibe there that's really wild. And I think only an actor like Nick Cage has the like sort of not giving a fuckness enough to do something like this, where like not a lot of actors I think would take this on, whereas he's just like, I do 10 movies a year that most people don't see, so I'm just going to do shit. I'm just going to try things. Yeah. So for that, I think it works really well. But if you're into horror movies, I would check out Longlegs. I like it. This next one, I think I may have been the only one from the movie club who went and saw this. It's called The Bike Riders. And this, I gave this 3.5 out of 5. This is I want to say it's set in like the 60s.
It's between like the 60s and 70s, but it's kind of like...
Is it even earlier than that? Is it like 50s maybe? I can't remember
it's like
when it's set.
Mid-60s.
Yeah.
But they throw in like pieces and parts throughout from like the early 70s to the early 80s, like, and they all cut back to the...
Yeah. Did you watch this one?
I watched it last night, actually.
Oh, you did?
Nice. Yeah, I found it. I've wanted to watch it since it came out. I don't know why I wasn't able to go and watch it in theaters. Probably was one of those days that I just couldn't go.
So what'd you think?
I kind of wish it went more into like the biker gang feel. But I thought it was entertaining. I didn't really like the style necessarily. With like you're being told it from Benny's wife's point of view, and she's just giving interviews to a guy that did like was just like embedded himself in the gang and like rode along and interviewed and took pictures. Entertaining, but I kind of wish it was a little bit more like rowdy with the biker gang involved. Yeah. But it was good. It definitely caught my attention when I watched it last night, but it's not one that I'm like, I need to rewatch that because it's just Tom Hardy does a great job.
I love Tom Hardy.
His role is perfect.
Yeah.
but I just kind of wish it gave you more of that like
What'd you think
start of a biker gang feel.
What'd you think of Austin Butler as the star?
I liked it.
Yeah,
I
he's
think
good.
I think he did really well.
He's really good. So he's obviously most known for Elvis, that he exploded onto the scene with Elvis. I haven't seen it. I heard kind of mixed reviews about the movie itself, but I think his performance was like widely praised. He's also Fade Routha in Dune Part 2 from last year, and Benny from the Bike Riders. Both of movies I saw and liked quite a bit, and I like him in those movies quite a bit. This movie's got a lot to like. I'm kind of like you, where
I just wish there was more to it.
Yeah, it's
like
almost
more
like
action.
I wish
bit.
there was like a grittier gangster version of that movie, whereas it's more of like a love letter to the time when biker gangs were not like criminally affiliated gangs. It was more of just like a bunch of like war vets getting together to just hang out and like ride motorcycles.
What I read on it
together.
Is it's loosely based off of the Outlaws MC, which is an actual one percenters club. It's loosely based off that. I think there is a Vandals MC, but I don't know that 100%. But so I think it's loosely based on the Outlaws. But yeah, it's like that. It's throughout the movie you realize this is post World War II, but post World War II, kind of post Korea,
right?
Pre-Vietnam,
right?
And then
so that's the version of America that you're in.
So these guys are all coming back, and then they just want to hang out with their buddies. Right. Bikes started becoming popular, and then in the movie you start to get introduced to the Vietnam guys, kind of more or less at the end. Right. That come in. They're like the new guys, the young guys,
different breed,
right?
Different type of guy.
Yeah. The ones coming back introducing drugs and violence, and then it kind of ends the movie there, and you're like, oh, now I was getting ready to like get into it more.
It's almost like if they wanted to, they could make a Bike Riders sequel that would be way more of the like, gang
just
violence,
straight up violence.
And it'd be like Goodfellas on motorcycles or something. But it's also, to your point, it's also loosely based on some book, I guess, that is a journalistic investigation into a real biker gang, but it's not like a nonfiction book in that it's mostly words. It's like mostly a picture book, I guess. It's like a series of photographs.
So the guy taking pictures is really who the story's through.
Exactly. And they do that in the framework of the movie. But I guess that book you can actually get and read. It's a real book. So it's loosely based on that too, of like this guy, this photographer and this journalist, his real experience hanging out with this biker gang, doing interviews, taking pictures of them. So I guess the director of the movie, someone gave him that book. I was listening to an interview with him, and someone gave him that book years ago, and he's like, this is cool as fuck. This would be a good cool movie, which is honestly kind of incredible that he took that, which like doesn't really have a story. It's just a series of pictures and random interviews, and then invented a story and some characters around this.
Right.
So I think that's actually really cool, and I admire the creativity of it. I just, to your point, I don't think it quite scratches the itch of like what you're wanting that movie to be.
It was one of those when you watch the preview, like one of the previews, if I remember correctly, is them standing in front of the bar burning down, and you're like, oh, okay, you're gonna get that violence, you're gonna get that like
Tom Hardy's a fucking thug,
and
it's
that's kind of earlier in the movie, and he, his the second, because they don't have like president or VP, like he's the president of the club, but they don't have like the sergeant at arms like in Sons of Anarchy or the VP and when the cops and the firefighters are both on both sides of him, and he's like, dude, we gotta get out of here. He looks at him and he goes, no, we don't. Yeah. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, they're scared of us. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, this is going to get intense. And then it just never really.
Right. And it's also another example of Tom Hardy. He's always putting on a voice. He's always doing some weird thing with his voice. I don't know what it is about him. I think he just likes doing that as part of his character. He's like, I'm just going to come up with some weird voice. He must have some great
voice coaches, though, to help.
Because he's doing kind of this weird, like, his voice is a little high-pitched and kind of weird sounding coming from a big, burly, like, mean-looking dude. Because he's like, yeah, burn it down. He's like, yeah, they're scared of us. He's like doing this weird. You're like,
it's like almost old New Yorker, but I mean they're from Chicago, so I guess Chicago kind of has an accent.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. And then Jodie Comer as Benny's girlfriend.
Oh, her voice is so annoying.
She's
though.
doing a real choice with her
Right.
accent as well. I think she's good in the movie, but I just think
I thought she was good.
The accent
The
work is
accent was kind of a little
interesting.
annoying. Though.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you checked that out because I was curious to talk to someone else about
Yeah,
that.
I had been wanting to watch it for a while, and then I couldn't find anywhere, and I was, just Googled it, and it was like, oh yeah, it's free on Prime, and I'm like, oh,
yeah.
tell me.
Fuck yeah, good move. Next up is another movie that we saw with I think most of the movie club.
I think everyone in the
maybe
movie
everyone.
club-
This might have been the only one this whole year where all of us were in
I know.
attendance, and it's mainly because of fucking
Well,
Sam. He's never there anymore.
Civil War, we might have all been.
I think Civil
involved
War
in.
we might have all been there, yeah. But this movie is called The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and this is Guy Ritchie's latest movie with Henry Cavill and Alan Ritchson, the star of Jack Reacher on Amazon Prime. I think you and I and pretty much everyone else in the movie club were big fans of this movie.
Yeah,
I
mean,
had a great time with this movie.
It's one of those. It's again based on a true story.
Mm-hmm.
The cast was just.
I thought
brilliant.
the cast was great. The chemistry between all of the cast members was fucking awesome.
And
it's like classic Guy Ritchie where it's like funny, but
Right.
there's great action and there's like quipping between the characters and they're breaking each other's balls and joking
Right.
and stuff.
It was just as a movie. Again, we talked about this on. I think you said it right. The Civil War and Monkey Man.
Mm-hmm.
So go check that out to get the more in depth. Overall, just entertaining. I would definitely revisit, rewatch it. I had
100%.
a blast watching it. I wouldn't necessarily change anything about it because I think it just everything went well together and it was just a fun movie going experience.
Agreed. We came out of that and I was like, God, that was a fun fucking movie. I just really
Yeah, we
I
were
had a
all
great
just like
time
that
with
was
yeah.
that was good. That was well worth it.
It was well
and,
worth it. Yeah,
It lived up to the expectations.
for sure. Next up is the last one of the 3.5 out of 5 that I have on this list, and that's a movie called Twisters. Did you?
I haven't
end up
seen it
checking
yet. I'm trying.
Twisters
I
out?
keep trying to find it. I thought I saw it on Prime, but it might have to be a purchase on Prime.
Yeah.
But I want to watch it because I love Twister.
Dude, the original Twister is a sick movie. I love that
so
movie.
good.
And one of Taya's all-time favorites too.
Dude, it's one of my all-time
Yeah.
favorites.
And it's one of those ones where like I remember thinking because this used to be a movie that I saw on TV all the time when I was younger. And it was one of these movies, I don't know why I thought this, but for whatever reason, I thought that was like a relatively underseen movie that like only I knew about and a few
Twister?
other people.
Oh, no,
And then
that's
like I found out
a
Taya
global
loved it and then watched
phenomenon.
it. Yeah, and then you love it. And like so like way more people had seen
Yeah.
that movie than I thought when I was a kid. But just a really enjoyable movie. I think the sequel is very, very enjoyable and super entertaining. It's not as good as the first one,
of course.
which I think is the case for most sequels. But I think Glenn Powell is like in his movie stardom, like fucking
he's starting to
sweet
take
spot
off.
right now. He is like taking off. I think it's Daisy Edgar Jones is the star opposite him. I enjoyed this a lot. Taya and I went and saw this. We had a great time with it. It's like in my mind, Twisters is like the perfect summer blockbuster. We saw this in the summer. It dropped. And it's like, big action, good characters, like fun interactions. You're not going to be disappointed if you watch this movie.
I want to. Yeah. I just need to find it to where it's free and I'm
Especially if you like the first one,
Yeah.
you'll enjoy the second one. All right, moving on into the 4-star category. The first movie up here is a movie called Challengers. This is a movie that I did not expect myself liking. I did not expect to like this movie as much as I ended up liking it. I caught this movie after it came out in theaters. I think it was on Prime Video. This is the Zendaya kind of star vehicle movie about the tennis player who it's essentially like an erotic thriller, not an erotic thriller, but like an erotic sports movie where she portrays a young tennis star in her, like high school era.
Right.
There's like this whole tournament system you can be in from the
Like
time
the
you're a young
junior
kid. Yeah,
system.
like the juniors or whatever, the junior nationals, and then so she meets these two friends, these two white guy friends who are both outstanding tennis players in their own right and like stars of these junior national tournaments. They meet her when they're all, I think, in high school because they're talking about her during that period of the movie, like she's going to accept a scholarship and go play at Stanford. So I think they're in high school. And like these two guys, basically from the time they see her play on the court and then meet her at this like after tournament, after party sort of thing, they're like both of them, they're like, I am in love with this girl. Like, I'm in love with the way she plays tennis, and I'm in love with her as a person. Like,
Right.
she's the most beautiful, amazing, competitive, like, hot woman I've ever seen in my life. And so they both end up fawning over her, and the rest of the movie is basically, so there's like, it cuts back and forth between like 3 different timelines. So like them when they're in junior nationals, them when they're in like their college years where she's at Stanford, they have gone off to try and do pro tennis and all this other stuff. And then them like in the latter part of their careers. And it's this very interesting dynamic. It keeps bouncing back and forth throughout the movie of like what happened between what their equal pursuit of her did to their relationship and then did to the 3 of theirs relationship. And then she goes on to marry one of them, but she kind of is in love with the other one more and like wants to fuck that guy more.
So it's just a sports version of the Twilight Saga.
Kind of, but it's very well done. Fucking kick-ass soundtrack. Just like 3 hot people having great chemistry. The tennis scenes are honestly like
just 3
really
hot people having great sex.
Yeah, it's fucking,
like, oh.
And what's weird is like this is a highly erotic movie with very little sex in it. Like almost no sex actually, which is like
but the sexual tension.
But
is
it's
through the roof.
all about sexual tension, and it's all like the relationship between like sports and sex and like what like your play on the tennis court says about you in the bedroom and all of this kind of stuff. There's a lot going on, a lot of like subtext. This is another one where I kind of mentioned with Twisters where Glenn Powell is like in Twisters and in Top Gun Maverick, he's like, oh, this guy's a bona fide movie star. I mean, we already knew this about Zendaya, but you watch this movie and you're like, she is a bona fide fucking movie star.
But
like,
Tom Holland's not too happy about it, though.
No. And that was like one of the things on the internet, too. That was
I
one
always
of the big
was seeing
jokes
that.
when the trailer dropped, because there's this very famous image of like this threesome that is
sitting on
about to happen when they're like in their younger years, and everyone immediately was like, I bet Tom Holland was not stoked about this movie. But hey, you know what? They just got engaged, so Tom Holland's winning. And he's fucking Spider-Man.
Bro, did you see that ring?
Is it massive?
I'm pretty sure
imagined
it's
He's
like
got
bigger
fucking,
than that softball.
Well, he's got Spider-Man money, dude. He's got stupid money.
Well, they also get all that shit for free to like show it off. They're like, yeah, you can wear that.
Yeah.
It's $900,000.
Yeah.
And like, oh, look at my new. And then you, as soon as you leave, you're like, here, take it back.
Isn't that the best kicker? Rich people get shit for free. It's like,
right.
You have the money to buy
Dude, that's
it.
my everyone like complains about Vegas. Like, why do all the rich people get all the free shit? I'm like, well, they spend the most money usually. So I mean, like that one makes sense.
At least that makes sense. Yeah.
I'm like, but yeah, why do the rich people get all the free shit? Just because they know the other rich people that have the free shit.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, I cannot recommend Challengers enough. It's again a movie that is like when that trailer first dropped, I was like, I don't think I'm the demographic for this movie. It's not that.
Did you watch
sort
it
of a
alone or did you
story.
watch it with Taya?
I watched it alone because I don't know if I couldn't tell if Taya would like that or not. Because I told her afterwards, I'm like, that movie's fucking great, and I was like, I think you would like it, and she was like, not interested. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I've seen all the previews, and I'm like, I'm not interested in that.
It's really took me by surprise. I think this movie is like one of the movies of the last several years that when I first saw the trailer, I was like, no, probably not going to watch that. And then I ended up just giving it a shot, and it blew me away. I fucking loved it. So highly recommend Challengers. This next movie up is a movie that I gave 4 out of 5, and I'm honestly flirting with giving it a little bit higher, although maybe I'll keep it at 4, and it's a movie called Civil War. Another movie that we covered here on the podcast and pretty much devoted almost an entire episode to, along with those other 2 movies we mentioned. So if you want more detailed thoughts on that, go check out that episode. We probably posted that around April of last year. Civil War is a fucking badass movie, man. There is some impressive filmmaking going on in that movie.
Yeah, so again, like Zach said, go listen to the actual episode we did on to get like the real in depth on it. I think we all went in with that expectations of like a war movie.
Yeah, it was not what we all thought it was going to be.
No, but it not being what we thought it was didn't take away from what it was.
I agree. I think that's well put.
It was still an extremely well done movie. I will say there's certain parts in it that are very disturbing.
Yes.
But it was extremely well done. I think they kind of flirted. I mean, I think we talked about it on the episode, but like the tension in our current modern day society between political parties and groups of people is like, I think they flirted with, as an election year.
Yeah.
It was an election year, I guess. They flirted, I think, with like a very dangerous concept and idea that people were actually like talking, not because of the movie, but talking about in the real world of the possibilities of a civil war. So I was kind of interested to see how they maybe tiptoed around that. But I mean, we left that and I was kind of like, holy shit. I like that. I mean, it was a great movie. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah.
It's one of those though that I'm kind of like, I'm not a rush to watch it again.
Right. Just because it's so like disturbing.
It's disturbing and it's a tough movie.
Yeah.
Because it sets in a lot of realities of the possibilities or like things we know are going on in other countries. But yeah, that was great. I loved it. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it and you can stomach war movies and like, you know, the concepts of it. Highly recommend it. Great.
And
movie.
also, you know, obviously it's not in theaters anymore, but if you're going to watch this at home and you haven't seen it, if you have a great like surround sound system, crank the fucking volume up.
Yes.
The sound in this movie is incredible.
Dude, the sound in the movie, I think it made it the most terrifying and like piercing.
Yeah.
I think that was the most like the hardest part about it is you could almost feel the movie sometimes because the sound was like piercing.
Yeah.
Like the gunshots were not like normal movie gunshots. It was like
they like sounded like you were in a gun range.
Right, like you're at a gun range with almost no ear protection.
Yeah.
And like you could hear like thumps in your chest and you're just kind of like, or like feel them and you're just like, whoa, like it was a movie experience and it was great.
I completely agree. This is a movie where like it's hard. There's probably a very short list of movies that I could think of off the top of my head where the sound is such a big part of it.
Right. Dunkirk, I mean,
Dunkirk is another one where like the sound is such a big part of that. Like seeing that movie in theaters with the IMAX sound and everything is such a big part of that. Civil War is another example of this where it's just like we were all talking about that when we left the theater. Dude, we're like, the fucking sound of that.
If we went and saw that in like Dolby or something, I probably would have had like a heart attack. Like those gunshots would have been like, I thought someone right next to me was just shooting it in my ear.
Great movie. I highly recommend this movie. The only reason I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 is that kind of like we talked about on our episode, it like wrong foots you a little bit and it's not what you think it's going to be. And I think kind of like the Bike Riders, there's a different version of this movie where that's more violent and
you want
more
of
a war movie.
Right.
Yeah, and I think
it.
If you go in thinking it's that, which I think we all kind of did, you're like, huh, that's not what I was expecting that to be, but it's still good.
Right.
It's just like not what I thought that was going to be, you know, like kind of wrong-footed me a little bit.
Not constant action about massive war, but like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Still a lot of action.
Yeah.
And like thrilling action.
Yeah. Also, I think one of the comparisons I was thinking about while we were talking about it is a lot like the movie Contagion. Have you ever seen Contagion?
It's not ringing
the Steven Soderbergh movie. So it's basically about like a, you know, obviously titular contagion breaking out, like a pandemic.
Right.
Sort of a COVID-esque flu-like, you know, respiratory flu-like illness that basically kills like 99% of people who contract it. That movie gained like a big popularity of rewatch during 2020 when all the lockdowns were happening. And actually me and Taya...
Probably making people freak out.
Right, yeah. Taya and I had seen that years ago when it came out. I think it came out in like 2011 or something like that. I had seen it when it first came out, and I remember it being good and disturbing. But we rewatched it during COVID. But the reason I bring that movie up is like watching Contagion during COVID or in a post-COVID world is like very disturbing because you're like, this is so close to reality, or what is like a worse version of what we were experiencing. Civil War is similar in that what makes it so disturbing is how close it is to reality.
Right.
And it's just, you know, a political climate like we have today, the tension, if you just ratchet that up a few more notches, you get this, which is like, I think what he was going for as a director. This is Alex Garland wrote and directed this. And I think he accomplishes what he sets out to do, which is like a warning of, hey, by the way, this is what this looks like if we keep going on this current trajectory sort of thing. So, yeah. And it also like succeeds in not really making any political statements necessarily because it keeps it very, very vague in terms of
you don't really
like
know
who,
much of going
who's fighting
till the end.
Right, yeah. Right, exactly. So, but I think that he walked a very fine, like, tightrope doing that, and succeeded in doing so. I think so. Yeah, Civil War, fucking great movie.
Great movie.
Hitman is the next movie up. This is another one I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. This was like a sneaky, really good movie. This was another Glenn Powell movie. This was I think it was straight to Netflix. But it's basically loosely based on a true story of this guy who was like, he's like a professor or something. And he's kind of this like dweeby, middle-aged guy who's like not got a lot going on in life. And he like has a secondary job helping his like local police catch people. He does like their surveillance systems for them
like
or
an
something.
audio surveillance guy,
Yeah,
like
and he's just
technician.
doing it to make some money on the side, and because he's bored, and he doesn't have a girlfriend, he's not married, like
Right.
all this stuff.
Just real nerd.
Real kind of dorky guy. And then he basically ends up discovering that he has this secret talent for portraying different sorts of characters to go in and elicit confessions from criminals.
Right.
So he basically just uncovers this talent where he can like be an actor and put on different wigs and different clothes and
Like an
fake
undercover
facial hair
cop.
and be like a quote unquote undercover cop, but pretend to be different types of criminals. And he makes it this whole game of like, I can get into the psychology of whoever this person is that we're trying to get a confession out of, and I can be what they want me to be and be
Right.
comfortable around and say something they don't want to say. And it's just like a total showcase for Glenn Powell to be like, look how good of an actor I am. Very, very enjoyable, very funny. If you're a Glenn Powell fan, I say definitely check this out. Loosely based on a true story, and it's got like a really cool ending to it, and like some interesting scenes in there where they're like, he ends up falling in love with one of the criminals that he's supposed to get a confession from, which adds like an obvious wrinkle
Right.
to the whole thing. And how they kind of navigate that whole situation is really, really entertaining. So, again, I think this one, more so than any of the other movies we've mentioned here that are on streaming services already, check this one out if you're like at home during a weeknight or whatever and you're wanting to fire something up on Netflix. Hitman's really good. This next
I didn't
movie,
find it that good, but
you watched it?
yeah.
You didn't like it?
I mean, it was entertaining, but I just wasn't in the mood when I watched it, and I was just kind of like, meh, whatever.
Just kind of meh.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I didn't know you had seen that one, but interesting to hear that you weren't that big a fan, because Taya and I watched it together and we were both like, that was fucking good. I really liked that.
I mean, there were funny parts where I was like, oh, yeah. And then I think I was just laying on the couch, though, one night, and I just wasn't. And I'm like,
Yeah.
let's just throw something new on.
Yeah.
And I just probably was on my phone a lot more than
Yeah.
in the movie.
Just didn't do it for you.
Yeah.
Have you seen this next one? It's called Rebel Ridge.
I don't believe so.
Dude, highly recommend. Highly recommend. So, I don't want to get these people's names wrong, because I want to tell you the director and the star of this movie. But this is another one that Taya and I watched together. Again, another Netflix original. This was not on my radar at all. Started hearing really good things about it. We fired it up one night on Netflix, and we were both like, this movie fucking rips. So the director and writer is Jeremy Saulnier. He's known for Green Room and Blue Ruin are two of his prior movies that I've seen. He's a very interesting director in that he has this like really visceral, like real life, violent sort of way of filmmaking and storytelling. All of his movies revolve around like some sort of revenge story or, you know, really like ultra violent, like bad criminal people. I highly recommend both Green Room and Blue Ruin, although I will say Green Room is a disturbing movie. It's not a movie I've revisited because it kind of fucked me up after watching it. But this movie, the star is Aaron Pierre, and you're going to start to hear a lot about Aaron Pierre. I think that guy's going to be cast in a lot of shit. He was in... The only other thing I've seen him in before this, he was in an adaptation of The Underground Railroad on Amazon Prime Video, which is a fantastic, like Pulitzer Prize winning novel by Colson Whitehead. But he's the star of the adaptation of that show on Prime, and I hadn't seen him in anything until this movie. And he basically, the loose premise of this is he is on his way. He gets like a bunch of cash to basically like a, you know, bail bondsman sort of thing to go bail his cousin out of jail, who his cousin has a history of criminal behavior, but he's trying to like go on the right path. Aaron Pierre's character is convinced that the only reason he got arrested this time is because he fell in with the wrong people, got in the wrong situation at the wrong time. And since he had priors, he's back in jail. So he's going to like bail his cousin out of jail and like take him away from his situation and like put him on the straight and narrow.
Right.
On his way there, he's basically on a bicycle and he's got a backpack on with all of this cash that he's going to go use to bail his cousin out. A cop comes up behind him and just like runs into his bike and knocks him off the bike. He falls down, scrapes himself up and everything. And basically he starts getting interrogated by these cops and they're basically saying it's like his fault. And he's like, what are you talking about? You hit me with your car. And they basically steal his cash and say that they come up with some sort of legal loophole about how they think he's using it for like drug money or something.
Right,
and so they take it
over
from
X
him.
amount.
Yeah, and they take it from him. And then basically throughout this, and it's utilizing a real life criminal like law loophole that is actually a real thing. You can look up articles about this. I can't remember the name of the actual term for it, but it's like some sort of legal form of seizure where these cops can take basically underfunded police forces in small town America are using this to like basically legally steal money from citizens to then fund their department. And so basically what happens is they jack his money and they let him go and everything, but they're like, this money's ours. And it's, it goes under some sort of seizure thing where they have to have it for X amount of time. Basically, he's like, I need this in the next 24 hours to bail my cousin out, or he's getting transferred to like a maximum security and then he's fucked.
Right.
So he's like, I need this now. And they're like, tough shit, bud, fuck off. And so he then like shows up at their precinct or whatever. And he's like, I want to report a robbery. And the lady's like, taking his information or whatever. And he starts just describing her fellow officer and like has his badge number, his name and everything. And that guy walks in. And then there's this like this standoff of like, hey man, what the fuck? You're coming here accusing one of our cops of robbing you. And so over the course of the movie, things start escalating. They keep trying to get him to fuck off and go away. And you come to find out he's like this
was he an ex-army?
super fucking,
now I think
he's
that
this
I've
super
seen
fucking badass
for.
like special forces guy who basically like trains Navy SEALs in hand-to-hand combat and like martial arts. So the whole movie, it ends up getting like there's a lot of like cool hand-to-hand action scenes where he's almost like a good guy protagonist who like he's like anti-guns and he's like I'm not going to shoot anyone, but I'm going to beat the fuck out of you and disarm you. And so he's like Batman, essentially. And so there's these awesome choreographed fight scenes where he's just disarming these cops and like putting in them fucking headlocks and shit. Dude, tremendous movie.
Now you're talking about, I've seen the preview.
Yeah.
And I'll have to see if I can find it again somewhere on
this is
streaming.
one, like, if you weren't so high on Hitman, you're going to watch this and be like, fuck yeah, that was a sick movie. Like, you're going to really enjoy this. So Rebel Ridge is something that I highly recommend to anyone who is listening to this. That's a Netflix original. That's pretty fucking awesome. Next up is a movie that I know for a fact you did not see because this is a horror movie. It's Smile 2. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars because this is legitimately one of the scariest fucking movies I've ever seen. We had never seen the original Smile. It came out a couple years ago. Obviously, I've talked about it on the podcast before, and you know this, but during October, we watched a lot of scary movies. We decided, I was like, the new one's coming out. Do you want to watch the first one? And Ty was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, for the longest time, she's like, I'm too fucking scared to watch it. But I'm like, come on, let's just do it. Let's fucking watch it and we'll go see the new one. So we watched it. First one's scary as shit. And then we go see the new one. And like, you obviously aren't a horror movie guy, so you don't watch a lot of horror movies in theaters, but they hit different in theaters, dude. Like, again, talking about Civil War and like the sound and everything, there's something about being in a movie theater and watching a horror movie with like the jump scares and the music and all of that shit that's so much fucking scarier because you're in a theater and it's so much louder than it is at home. And Smile 2 is disturbing as fuck and I thought absolutely terrifying. I was talking to someone the other day who was like, yeah, wasn't a fan at all, didn't think it was scary. And I'm like, what? One of the scariest movies I've ever seen. I was like legitimately fucking scared throughout that entire movie. If you're a horror fan, I say check out Smile 2. It's for all the sickos out there, but I would say for you, steer far clear of this movie.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Next up, we are now into the 4.5 out of 5. So these are movies that I think are like really, really fucking good. First one on this list is Alien Romulus. We saw this together. I just straight up absolutely love this movie, but that's not a big surprise. I'm a huge fan of the Alien franchise. I thought this was great. We also, again, this is a movie that we have further thoughts on a different episode of this podcast. So if you'd like to hear more in-depth thoughts on this movie, go check that episode out. But yeah, what did you think of this?
I mean, I liked it until the end.
Yeah,
the end just fucked
really
me up.
Sicko, disturbing ending.
The end really just.
It was fucking good though.
It really fucked me up. That ending was just. It was hard to watch, but out of all the Alien movies, I actually enjoyed this one.
Yeah,
I think the jump scares were at a minimum because you could just tell when they were coming, and that's what I was more like not looking forward to is the jump scares. I think I got twice, and then at the very end, I was like I didn't want to look, but of course I'm not going to look away.
So without spoiling the ending for anyone who's listening who hasn't seen this, there is a creature, we'll say, towards the end of the film, like the climax of the film,
A terrifying
that is legitimately like nightmare fuel. And like, do you remember the reaction in our theater when it's first revealed?
Oh,
Everyone
yeah.
was just like, oh my God. Like everyone was like, what the fuck is that?
However someone created that, we're like, ugh.
Dude, some serious disturbing shit.
But I mean, again, I liked it. Surprisingly enough,
yeah,
I liked it.
And again, I talked about this at length on our other episode, but I'm a huge fan of this franchise. Like, this is one of these franchises where I'm just fully bought in, and they could make 50 of these, and I'm going to watch all of them, even if they're bad. I'm just committed, at this point. But I thought this was a legitimately great sequel, prequel, spinoff of the Alien
Somewhere
franchise.
in the Alien
you can plug it in somewhere in there.
universe.
I think it's shot really well. I think the suspense is really good. The Alien, the creature aspectness of it is gross enough to be like alien worthy, because that's what Alien's all about, is just gross fucking alien creatures fucking people up. I really, really enjoyed this. I just bought it the other day. I'm probably gonna. Did I tell you I went back and saw it a second time in theaters just by myself? I was just like, fuck it, I'm going back and seeing it. It's great.
Oh, I mean, it was good. I did enjoy it.
I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I highly recommend it. Next up is Furiosa: A Mad Max Saga. So you said you watched this, right?
Yep, it's on Max.
Yeah, and we didn't see this together, but Taya and I saw this in theaters. I fucking loved this movie.
Dude,
I thought it was great.
Again, I see, going back to Gladiator 2, they did this perfect, right? They did Furiosa: A Mad Max Saga.
Yes.
So they're saying it's in the Mad Max universe, but it's not.
But it's not like Fury Road 2 or something.
Right.
Yeah.
They didn't do Mad Max Fury Road 2. So I went into it going, this is a completely different story, but it's all in the same universe, in the same rough time frame. Mm-hmm. I loved it. I thought it was great. It was really entertaining. Too. Chris Hemsworth's character was just, you're like, okay, I needed introduced to a character like this in the Fury Road saga.
Yeah, what was his name? I'm gonna look it up real quick.
Is it Dementis?
I think it's Dementis. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great movie. I think I've watched it twice.
Really?
Already.
So I'm glad to hear that, because I don't think you and I have had the chance to like really talk about it much. Taya and I bought this one. I haven't had a chance to rewatch it at home, so I've only seen it the one time in theaters. But we came out of that, and I was like, I told Taya, I was like, it's not quite as good as Fury Road, but it gets pretty close. I mean, that's a really good fucking movie.
Yeah. Again, it's easier to give a movie like that a higher rating when you don't have to directly compare it to what you might think is a prequel and you think this is a sequel. We know that this is in the same time frame, like it literally says it's a Mad Max saga, but it's about Furiosa. So you're going into it going, I'm not going to see Tom Hardy's character in this movie.
Yeah.
And so it was easier to go into it, and you're just like, who am I going to see, Mm-hmm. And, it was great.
There is a character, I'm looking at the cast list, there is a character in there that is very Mad Max coded, and it's Praetorian Jack, and it's kind of like the guy who trains Furiosa on how to drive the war rig. He's very, very Mad Max coded.
Right.
But it's obviously not the character of Max. And yeah, you're right. Chris Hemsworth was Dementis. He's so good as Dementis.
Such a good Dementis.
He looks like he's having so much fun too, with just a long fucking beard, and he's like coated in this like red chalk the whole time.
Just a psychopath.
They gave him this like nose prosthetic thing that like sticks way off his face, and he's got this crazy accent, and just like it's great.
It's great.
I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I have to rewatch
well.
this at home, but I think, and again, to our point, like, it's not quite as good as Fury Road, but what we were just talking about with these sequels and how they get compared to the originals, this movie has it real tough, where in my opinion, Fury Road is like one of the greatest action movies ever made.
Yeah,
so it's like when you're making a sequel or a prequel to something like that is considered the blank of all time, like that's a tough fucking
I think they
job,
did. I think they did good by expanding the universe a little bit. Like you got to go to like the Bullet Farm.
You see more of that wasteland
oil.
and like the interaction between these like little cities that are
like,
still
these guys own the oil and
Yeah.
they trade us oil for fresh water, and these guys own the bullets, and it's kind of interesting. I enjoyed it.
When you watch these Mad Max movies, it's an idea that is so weird and out there that it shouldn't work, but it does. And like George Miller is just such a great director, and he's so good at directing this kind of action, which is just like long car chases in the desert with explosions and shit, that you're like, I don't really care that this is so weird. This is so cool that I'm just
never
in for this. Yeah, it's fucking awesome. So yeah, huge fan of Furiosa. This next one up, I gave this 4.5 out of 5. This is a movie that you probably haven't had a chance to see yet, and I don't even know if you're going to be interested in watching this or not. But
I thought I was, but I think I'm kind of leaning more on the no. Or if I do, I'll catch it on a streaming service.
Let me see if I can sway you at all. So this is a movie called Nosferatu. It came out on Christmas Day. I actually went and saw this Christmas Day night after doing family stuff the whole day and stuff. Really liked this movie. It's Robert Eggers, or Eggers. I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce his name, but he directed The Witch, which was an A24 horror movie about 1500s or 1600s, like early settlers of America and like witchcraft and stuff like that. A movie that a lot of people like. I wasn't as huge of a fan of. He did a movie called The Lighthouse that everyone loved. I haven't seen that yet, but he did a Viking war movie called The Northman a couple years ago that is really good. Sam and I went and saw that in theaters and really enjoyed ourselves. So if you want to check that one out at some point, I think you'd like that a lot. But this is his latest movie, and this is basically Nosferatu is a remake of a basically now 100-year-old movie. It's like one of the oldest movies in Hollywood. I think it came out in like 1922 or something. But in that movie was a loose adaptation of Dracula by Bram Stoker, which is like a classic, like 20th century, or maybe 19th century. I think it came out in the 1800s. Yeah, so 19th century like horror novel. But it's basically about like Dracula essentially, or a Dracula-esque figure. And this new movie, so Robert Eggers like really excels in doing period piece like horror gothic stories. Like if you look up the trailers for any of his movies, you're like, okay, I can see why. When I heard that he was doing Nosferatu, I'm like, this is the perfect guy to do a Nosferatu movie. And I saw it on Christmas Day, and it's like, it was a very interesting experience seeing that movie on Christmas Day with like a bunch of families. Like a bunch of families came to that with like, not young kids,
but like kids that
but
you're
like
maybe
middle school age kids. And I'm
here.
like, why are you taking your kids to see, like, Mufasa is out? You don't want to go see Mufasa? Like, it was just really odd, like watching that movie in a crowd like that, being like, so I think some of these parents probably made a mistake bringing their kids to this movie, but whatever. I'm having a great time. But
you guys can deal with that when you get home.
You guys can deal with the after effects of this later. But it is a really well done movie, and it's essentially like another Nicholas Hoult movie. So Nicholas Hoult was the star of Juror Number 2. He was actually in like 3 different movies last year, Nosferatu and Juror Number 2 being a couple of them. But he basically, so Lily Rose Depp is Johnny Depp's daughter, and she is the co-lead of this movie with Nicholas Hoult. The two of them are married, and she basically has this history of like what everyone else presumes to be mental illness, but what is really like essentially a demonic possession by this vampiric character of Nosferatu that never has any physical interaction with her until the very end of this movie, but is like metaphysically connected with her somehow. So anyway, her husband, Nicholas Hoult, works for some sort of like basically like a real estate company, because this is set like in the 1850s or something like that. Some sort of real estate company that deals with like deeds to houses and things like that. So he gets sent off into like the mountains of, Transylvania or wherever the area is that Dracula is supposed to be from, all by himself Like he's trying to make a name for himself at his company, like move up in the world, make more money to support his wife, everything. So he gets sent off into the mountains to basically get this mysterious, like, Ukrainian or whatever descent he is, count, some like recluse count, to sign off on these documents, because this guy's going to like move from his castle in the mountains of Transylvania into this town in, I think it's like Germany. It's set in Germany somewhere. So he like makes his way there, and things get spookier and spookier and spookier the closer he gets. And there's like these little towns and villages he crosses as he's getting there, and they're all like warning him, don't go anywhere near this place. The fucking devil lives there. And he's just kind of like, okay, whatever you guys say.
I have to get these papers signed.
I gotta make money, man. I gotta fucking close this deal. So he like makes his way in there, and he encounters this count. And basically, the way the director shoots the movie is like everything is in shadows, and like especially in the castle at night, the only light source is like a fire burning in the fireplace over there, but like everything else is in shadow.
Right.
And so it's this big, like tall, imposing character with like this big coat on, but you never really see his face, and you only ever really see his hands, and he'll reach his hands out, and he's got these long claw-like fingernails and these like decrepit looking hands. And he's like, he has this very, very interesting choice in like the voice that he does for this Nosferatu character. And I don't want to like spoil it. People just need to experience it for themselves. It was like not at all what I was expecting this character to sound like. But basically he starts like essentially like fucking haunting this guy and like attacking him at night as a vampire would. And so Nicholas Holt's trying to like escape from this castle and go back to his wife and get away from this guy. And he like essentially has been bitten, and like part of his blood has been sucked or whatever. So he's like partially infected as a vampire and kind of fucked up, and he's making his way back. And then the Nosferatu character has this guy, basically Nicholas Holt's boss is working for him, and he arranges for the like, it's a lot like there's a scene in this which is basically the entire movie of The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which I told you about, which came out 2023, which is again based on one chapter from Dracula, which is all about the transportation of like the box that's holding the body of Dracula via boat to wherever he's going to, right? Like to London or wherever. So there's like a scene like that in the movie where he's like terrorizes this ship or whatever. But then he gets to land, and basically when he gets there, like all hell breaks loose. Like the plague starts spreading all over this town. People are dying all over the place. Lily Rose Depp continues to get more and more like possessed. Like this Aaron Taylor Johnson's character is basically Nicholas Holt's buddy, and he's like, I'll agree to like take your wife in and let her live with us while you're gone, because it's going to take him like months to go there and then come back. And then like this poor guy is like, your fucking wife is possessed, and she's like scaring the shit out of my kids. She's like, like twitching.
We don't
and
want
fucking,
her
like
anymore.
foaming at the mouth at night and shit. Like we don't want her around. So anyway, like Nosferatu finally arrives. The plague spreads or whatever, and then basically the two of them, like a small group, there's like a doctor and Nicholas Hoult and a couple other guys, and then Willem Dafoe, who is Green Goblin from Spider-Man. Willem Dafoe shows up in like almost every one of Robert Eggers' movies as like
random
a
point.
Fucking crazy guy. Like Willem Dafoe is so good at playing like a really fucking weird, crazy,
something
like,
about his looks
sort of
just makes him perfect for
He's
it.
a weird guy, I feel like Willem Dafoe's got a lot going on because he plays that part like a little too well. But in this movie, he's like it's a very fun character for him because he's basically like an old like science professor who's a really smart, learned man who became like obsessed with the occult. So like they go to him being like, we think there's a vampire like fucking, or like a demon or something terrorizing our town. Can you help us? And he's like, I fucking know all about this. And so he's like, let me tell you what to do.
Go.
Dude, really, really fucking good movie. And it's not, here's my pitch to you, because I know you don't like horror movies. It's not scary in the way that like a typical horror movie is. It's very creepy and atmospheric. So I think you would be able to handle it. And it's like a vampire story. It's not like a demon. It's not some sort of
I
a
think I was ready
thing.
to like go see it. It like kind of faded in my mind.
I really, really, really enjoyed it. I think Lily Rose Depp, the only other thing I had seen her in was this show on Max or on HBO a couple years ago with The Weeknd, like the artist, the musical artist, The Weeknd, called The Idol. The show was terrible and got horrible reviews, and it was only like 5 episodes long. It was supposed to be like a full 10 episodes.
Right.
They just canceled it. They were like,
Yeah,
fuck you guys, you get 5. I think she's a pretty good actress, but that show is really bad. She's fucking awesome in this movie. Like, some of the best like body acting I've ever seen of someone who was like
the
possessed
contortions.
by, like all these weird contortions, and she's doing this weird shit with like her tongue and her face. She's foaming at the mouth and shit, and it's just like, it's really, really believable. And you're like, this is like, seriously, like if this woman was in your house, you'd be like, she's got serious fucking problems. I don't want her around anymore.
I want her out.
Yeah. So Nosferatu is a fucking badass movie, and like a really cool, creepy, moody, atmospheric
Interesting
movie.
Well, maybe I'll give it a go at some point.
Yeah. I wouldn't say like for you it's not right up your alley, but I think it's not like it's
I'm really only scared of like demon type
right.
movies.
It's not like a Smile 2 where Smile 2 is like that's a demon.
Right.
This is a vampire. Like vampires, they're scary, but it's a different type of. It's more of like,
Right.
and I think our society's sort of obsession with werewolves and vampires goes back a long way, and it really kind of I like movies that explore this type of stuff of like society's belief in these sorts of creatures way back in the day, like a couple
Right.
100 years ago, when there's just not a lot of access to information, and like the only info that you were getting was from like gypsies and like people who like studied weird occult books that are written in different languages, and like guys who looked like Willem Dafoe who are like
Right.
smoking fucking peyote and being like, there's vampires, and you're like, okay man, whatever you say, like
There's probably a lot more truth to a lot of these myths.
there might
Like,
be.
There might
There
be an
might be.
episode that I want to do about like dragons and maps.
Dude, well, one thing I've always wondered this about a lot of that stuff, there has to be something to a lot of this for it to be so long and enduring in our society. Like these stories go back a long way. Like
Right.
multiple
And
societies throughout
that knew
long periods of history that
nothing
were
about
not,
each other.
not around each other, have all things like dragons, vampires, werewolves, all this type of stuff. Like there's a reason it's been around for a while. So like maybe a lot of this shit
Dude,
was around at one point.
I know
That's
it's a
why there's
real
so many
random
stories
thing, and we
about
have
it.
one
Yeah.
more movie to touch on. Another episode that it's a conspiracy theory,
Okay.
but it's that dinosaurs didn't exist. And it is really fun to kind of dive into and think about.
I'm super
Because-
down for that one.
And this will just be real quick.
That sounds like a very like moon landing fake
Right, but like
conspiracy theory.
when you think about it, right? They believe, we've been a civilization for, there's been smart people since like the 1400s. Let's not give us too much credit. But you got to think the first fossil that was found was like late 1800s, I think, or early 1900s. And you're like, if dinosaurs died so many millions of years ago, how did no one stumble across a bone and like document it? And it's like someone did like a lot more research on it, but
Yeah.
and of course I watched the whole video because now I'm like, oh yeah, dinosaurs aren't real. But then I like think about it and you're like, there's no dinosaur bone set in the world that's an actual dinosaur bone set.
Dude, if you want to do this, we'll just go when we stop recording. I'm going to put it in my notes just so we have it on the queue. But
This could be our 150th episode where we get drunk and we talk about dinosaurs being fake.
there's an idea. Dragons were real. Dinosaurs were fake.
Dude.
I think we do 2 different episodes. Dragons were real. That's one episode.
And
Dinosaurs were fake. I'm super down. Let's do
Dude,
it.
let's do it. We gotta be controversial at some point. Calling dinosaurs fake, why not? Like,
Well,
it's not
I
like we're gonna
like-
get canceled for it.
I like those. That's why we did the moon landing conspiracy, like the moon landing fake thing, because I like the conspiracies that are like, it's not too serious, It's like
Right.
the
You're not gonna
ramifications
piss
of
off
that. Yeah,
people
like,
to where like they're like, oh my god, if I see you, I'm gonna punch you in the face.
it's not like a 9/11 thing where like a 9/11 was an
Right.
inside job is a very touchy topic.
Right.
But if you do like, hey, the moon landing was fake, everyone's like, fuck off, dude. Like,
or
no, this is-
dinosaurs weren't real.
or
and people
dinosaurs
are like,
weren't real. Yeah,
people can't get mad. They're like, my cousin died from it. Like, okay, your cousin
Right,
died from
yeah.
a dinosaur.
Yeah, like no one's relative got stomped
right.
on by a T-Rex, and they're
Right.
like, actually,
What you don't know, and you're like, well, wait a second.
you're so insensitive. All right, we got one more movie on this list, and to me, this is a bona fide 5 out of 5 stars, and that movie is Dune Part 2.
Which I believe we also have an episode out.
Yes, we
So
did do a
go-
whole Dune episode.
Go watch or listen to that.
Yeah, I mean, we did like a 2+ hour long podcast on Dune Part 1 and Part 2. So I don't have a lot I need to add here, but Dune Part 2, in my opinion, is a fucking masterpiece. One of the greatest science fiction movies ever made.
Do we get Dune Part 3 this year?
No, but it is in process. So what I've heard is that Dune.
Let's just wait till like 2028.
The third one, they're making it, and Denis Villeneuve, the director's coming back, and Timothée Chalamet, and
well, they
probably
have to.
Zendaya.
I mean, we have a.
So they're getting most of the band back together, which is promising. Because when they do sequels and like the director's not returning or the main stars aren't returning, you're like, I don't know how I feel about this. The band's getting back together, and the word on the street is they're basically doing the sequel to the original novel. Because obviously Dune Part 1 and Part 2 are just the first book,
Right.
which is the only one that I've read out of the whole series. And apparently the next one, so movie 3 is going to be book 2, which is called Dune Messiah. Word on the street is, though, Dune Messiah is weird as fuck. So I don't know what Dune Messiah, the movie, is going to look like. I have faith in Denis Villeneuve. He's a huge Dune fan, and he's a fantastic director.
Don't fuck it up, because
He has
Dune Part 2
knocked
was
this
great.
out of the park so far. One thing, and we don't have to go into a whole award season, discussion thing, because I mentioned something off the top of the episode, but one thing that I have found to be like strange and also kind of infuriating is the disrespect of Dune Part 2 in all of these awards conversations recently. Like, not a lot of nominations in the big award shows for director, for
because it was
Best
a big
Picture.
movie.
I'm just like, I don't know what people didn't like about this movie. This movie fucking ripped and made a shit ton of money, and pretty much everyone,
This movie slaps.
critics and fans alike, were like, this is an awesome movie. Steven Spielberg apparently told Denis Villeneuve this was like Empire Strikes Back. This was his Empire Strikes Back. That's pretty high praise coming
I think
from
we
Steven
talked about
Spielberg.
that on the episode.
It's like, shit, man. I don't know what else you want from a fucking movie.
We've also talked, and the movie critics don't know what they're talking about. They just get
Most of
paid.
them
They just
don't,
get paid to talk shit about movies that everyone likes but them.
It basically, most movie critics, and I went on a little movie critic rant, one of the last movie podcasts we were doing, but basically I think movie critics, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, are like, take the stance of like, if a movie is popular amongst normal movie-going fans, chances are you can bet the critics aren't going to like it. And if a movie is like seen by, if it made $10,000 at the box office, meaning no one fucking went and saw it. It
was
has
the
very
greatest
limited
movie
release.
ever.
Best movie ever made. Like no one's watched it, but only critics in LA and New York have watched it, but it's the movie of the year. And it's like, really?
Only critics in LA,
like some
who are the
weird
only
fucking-
two people that saw it.
Yeah, some weird drama that's supposed to be a metaphor about something. Those are always the movies that they award, instead of like Dune Part 2, which was just across the board universally acclaimed.
Right.
It's an awesome movie.
Well,
So, oh yeah,
I added two
You have a
movies.
couple on here that I did not see. Yeah.
Beetlejuice. So I watched the original Beetlejuice earlier.
Now, had you seen that
I had never seen it
like before this year or
before this
last
year.
Okay.
I'd never seen it.
I've still yet to see Beetlejuice. I've never watched it.
Really weird.
Yeah.
I mean,
Tim Burton.
Yeah, really weird.
Real strange.
It was entertaining.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, whatever,
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I think it's supposed to be like a funny horror
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Nothing horror about it.
Just kind of
It's just
comedy,
funny.
basically.
Because I mean, like the monsters and things that come up, it's like claymation, but it's like
Right.
we could shoot something better now and make something better. Just
Yeah.
the two of us with what we have. I watched the sequel just to see what it was. I was like, meh, whatever. Like, didn't really care.
So the new one's not all that.
I didn't think it was.
Okay.
But I didn't really care for I mean, it was entertaining. Again, it was one of those like,
Yeah.
well, I'm not like, why did I watch this? But
Yeah.
it's not like I'm like, ooh, I'm
Because that movie, when it came out, was like a big deal, and a lot of people were like, "Oh my god, Beetlejuice sequel! I'm so excited!"
hyped
Now,
up.
that was one of those things where, like, the first one I think is kind of like a cult classic of people just absolutely love. Like, if you've seen it, you love it,
Right.
And I just have never watched it. I totally missed that boat. So when the new one, like the trailers were dropping, I was like, "Don't care." Like,
Right.
I haven't seen the first one, and I'm not opposed to watching it. Like, I might check the first one out at some point, but
It's
not
one of
something
those
I've
like
ever
you're gonna
had
watch it and then you're gonna be like, I mean, okay, but like,
yeah,
kind of weird.
I've just never had any relationship to that material at all. Like, just,
I didn't either until the hype for this one was so big that I'm like, well, let me watch the first one and see what it's all about.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I'm kind of confused why there was so much hype about it. But
Okay.
maybe it just wasn't my movie.
out of 5 stars, what would you rate it?
Probably a 2.
2? Okay, gotcha.
And then The Beekeeper with
So,
Jason Statham.
I haven't seen it, but I've been wanting to watch it really bad.
watch it.
And I think it's on Prime right
yeah,
now.
yeah,
so
it's great.
You like
I loved it.
Yes, dude.
It's
So,
just a Jason Statham fucking movie, and there's nothing wrong with it.
I was gonna send. There's a brand new trailer that just dropped for a new Jason Statham movie, same director that he worked with for The Beekeeper, and it's like almost the same exact story. It's called A Working Man, and he's basically like a construction man this time.
I've seen it.
I saw the trailer and I was like,
and they're like, can you find our daughter?
Son of a bitch, he did it again. I'm like, keep doing it. Just do one a year.
Yeah,
I
he
love
gets
this
involved
shit.
with like the cartel or whatever, and like, can you go find her? I'm like, oh, dude, it's Jason Statham, and now he's taking Liam Neeson's role and taking.
I fucking love it, dude.
I'm hyped for it.
He's such a reliable action star, and like I love this like cinematic universe they're building out of just like Jason Statham plays a guy with a normal job, but turns out he's actually secretly a badass. And this just pretty soon it's just going to be like Jason Statham in The Cobbler, or like Jason Statham in The Bartender, and like just every fucking
Jason
job.
Statham in The Hobo.
Right? It's just he's secretly a badass, but he works as like a fucking accountant now. You know, like
Jason Statham in The Friar. And you're like, what does he do? He's like, he works at McDonald's as the Friar. And
I love it, dude. I fucking love Jason.
So yeah,
Statham.
I would say definitely watch The Beekeeper, and then watch the original Beetlejuice, I would say, and then decide if you want to watch the second one. But nothing like...
Yeah, Beekeeper's one that I heard a lot of people be like, you know, this is not an outstanding movie by any stretch of the imagination, but like if you like these sorts of movies,
Jason
you like
Statham
Jason
movies.
Statham, you're going to really enjoy yourself.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to check it out.
So for as we normally do on these episodes, I will run through the highest grossing films of 2024. Maybe not full numbers yet, because there's still at least 3 of the top 10 are still currently in theaters. Kind of a letdown of a year, I'd say. I mean, still made a lot of money, but I'd still say kind of a letdown of a year. At number 10, you had Godzilla, Kong, The New Empire, bringing in $196 million. So at number 10, you're kind of like, that's... I mean, $196 million to us is like, holy shit, that's a lot of money. But then you think about like some of the lists we've talked about where there's been multiple billion-dollar movies. You're kind of like, that's kind of a rough
Well, and this is domestic gross. And to your point, you go back to like, let's say the year 2016, like prior to COVID, something like that. Some of these Marvel movies, I mean, Marvel used to have 2 or 3 movies that would come out each year that would all be billion-dollar grossing movies. So yeah, like under $200 million domestic gross nowadays is a lot because it's a post-COVID world. But you know, if that's a 2016 movie, that's not even on the top 25 movies of the year, probably.
Number 9, which is still in theaters, you have Sonic the Hedgehog at $204 million. I don't think it'll move up to number 8. It's just too far behind. But that's a Paramount one, so I'm sure they're making pretty good money on that. 8, you have Twisters, which is Universal and Warner Bros. At $267 million. 7, surprisingly, you have Dune Part 2 at $282 million.
It's interesting to me that Dune didn't make more money.
I think it's a more niche kind of movie than you expect.
It's a kind of a weird sci-fi story, so I think that hurts it a little bit. But I thought for sure Dune would get to $1 billion worldwide, and it didn't quite make it. I think it was like 700 or 800 million, something like that.
Doesn't mean it's not doing good outside of theaters, though.
Right. And I mean, still, it's top 10 grossing movies for the year. It did really well.
It still almost did $300 million.
Right.
At 6, you do have Beetlejuice, another Warner Bros.
So clearly very popular with a lot of people.
At $294 million. At number 5, kind of surprising me, it didn't make more, but Despicable Me 4, $361 million. Now, I want to see Despicable Me 4, but I haven't yet, because I'm a huge Despicable Me fan.
So I've only ever seen the first one, and it was like years ago.
I love Despicable Me.
These are massively popular movies. Everyone that I know who watches them are like, yeah, they're fucking great.
Yeah,
they're super.
I love them. Yeah. I didn't go see the Despicable Me 4, but that had $361 million for Universal. And then you have Moana 2, which is still out in theaters from Disney, doing $434 million.
Massive movie.
Wicked. At number 3, still in theaters for Universal at $459 million.
And completely surprising to me, in the awards conversation right now, like is going to get nominated for several Oscars and might win some Oscars, which to me seems, I haven't seen Wicked, but like
my parents saw it and they said it was good, but I kind of like take what they say with a grain of salt. I'm like, well, they also said Red One with The Rock.
Oh yeah.
They said that was good. I'm like, you guys find all of that stuff entertaining.
Yeah.
But I've also heard things that Wicked's not very good. It's not.
I've heard some pretty muted reactions from people that I know personally who have seen it that are like, yeah, it was just fine.
Right. Like you'll be entertained, but nothing to write home about.
Also a part 1. There's supposed to be another one next year.
Great.
So
But that's at $459 million and third for Universal. So Universal's on here 3 times, making over $1 billion in 3 movies. Good for them. Number 2, you have Deadpool and Wolverine, who we expected to be up here at $636 million. I'd say that's kind of low though for a MCU movie and Deadpool and bringing Wolverine back.
Yeah.
I would say expectations were higher, but
I wonder if we filtered it for worldwide, did it go over $1 billion?
I don't know if they do worldwide on this.
I could try and find
I'll
it.
see if we can. And then number 1, kind of not necessarily surprised, another Disney movie, Inside Out 2, did $652 million. I loved Inside Out 1. I haven't seen Inside Out 2 though.
So I've never seen Inside Out, but I heard that from a lot of people that it's pretty fucking awesome. Moana, the original, I have seen. I enjoyed Moana. I haven't seen the sequel. I'll probably end up watching that with Taya. She's a big fan of Moana. So I guess I want to say, I didn't go back and listen to it, but I want to say when we did our 2024 anticipated release podcast, you and I predicted that Deadpool and Wolverine was not, if not the highest grossing movie of the year, was going to be
3.
like top 2 or 3.
So it did $1.3 billion in box office.
There we go. So it was over $1 billion. Yeah. Okay.
So, like for comparison, Inside Out 2 did $1.7 billion box office. But then you look at like a Wicked, and it's at, well, maybe it's not released worldwide because it's at 600 and almost 80 or almost 700 million. So,
yeah, I'm on Box Office Mojo. I was trying to figure it out because this is just domestic. Oh, maybe total gross. I thought there was a way you could filter it for the worldwide too.
Despicable Me 4 is almost at $1 billion, 969 million.
Dude, I think we talked about it before, but those animated movies, they're cash machines.
I'm pretty sure if you went back and listened, we probably had Dune in here, Deadpool, Wolverine, Moana, Inside Out, and Despicable Me. I'm pretty sure we put all 5 in the top 10.
I'm sure we did. Because, like, if there's one thing, if you look at the history of, like, Despicable Me 2 and the first Despicable Me, or, like, the first Moana, the first Inside Out, like all of these movies make $1 billion.
Well, and if they don't do good in theaters the first time, after they're on like Disney Plus and everyone watches, and they're like, oh my God, did you see it? They're like, hey, Inside Out 2's coming in theaters. Everyone's like, we're going to see it.
Dude, well, and it's a huge thing for families. Like imagine you have a couple of kids and they're young and they're watching Disney Plus all the time. Like obviously you're going to take them to go see Inside Out 2.
Right. Or
Moana 2. Like that's a whole family goes to the movies.
Right.
We spent $150 on tickets and fucking popcorn and drinks. Like big movies for families. So that's why those make so much fucking money.
But now we get into the top 5s.
Top five. Oh yeah, so you have our little reveal thing.
Right. So if you're watching the stream,
let me see.
I can do this real quick.
Because I'm watching the stream over here. Let me see how delayed it is.
So you have our Zach will be on the left. Zach will be column F, I'll be column H, and we will go through and see our top 5s. Should we do them at the same time, and then we'll say, like, you say Y and I'll say Y?
So, like, 5 and then go 4?
Right.
Yeah.
But, like, I'll reveal them at the same time, and then we can each say it. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, coming in at number 5 for both of us.
Drum roll.
Boom! Zach has Civil War, and I have Alien Romulus.
Okay. Both of those movies I'm a huge fan of.
Yes.
Civil War, I mean, as they get revealed, I'll reveal more.
Right,
of my thoughts
it's easier
to
to make your argument once we're done.
Yeah.
Do we want to just save our arguments for when we're done to like argue our rankings?
Yeah.
Okay. So Zach has Civil War. I have Alien Romulus at 5. At 4, Zach has Nosferatu, and I have Civil War.
Okay, so we're very almost in line with Civil War as to where we had it. Okay.
At 3, you had Alien Romulus, and I had Gladiator 2.
Okay, I got you.
I
like that pick for you.
2, you had Furiosa and we both had Furiosa and Mad Max Saga. And then I guarantee you we both had the same one at 1.
We'll see. Dune Part 2.
Part 2.
That's
is
interesting
one.
that both of us have Dune Part 2 and Furiosa as 1 and 2.
Well, so unfortunately, I wanted you to wait to go see. I think you were down in Florida when Dune came out, and you're like, "Yeah, we'll wait and see it or whatever." And you and Taya went and watched Dune in Florida.
No, so that was Oppenheimer. That's,
Okay, well,
that's what happened with Oppenheimer.
You guys were gone somewhere because I'm like, "Let's go see Dune," and you're like, "Yeah, we already saw it." And I'm like, "What?" And I think you guys were
what
somewhere
happened with that?
when you went and saw Dune, and I didn't get to go see it in theaters, so I watched both Dune and Furiosa on Max.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember what happened with Dune. Why we didn't see it with the movie club.
I don't know.
I can't
Dune
remember.
and Furiosa were neither of them were movie club movies.
Furiosa, I know it was just me and Taya. I think we went and saw that, just the two of us. And then I can't remember with Dune.
I'm pretty
but,
sure Dune you were out of town somewhere.
Maybe. Could that happen for Oppenheimer too? The whole movie club minus me went and saw Oppenheimer
Right.
here.
We were like,
And I went and saw it in Florida with Taya.
right.
Yeah.
We saw it before you,
Yeah.
and we were all texting. We were like, imagine not seeing Oppenheimer.
Yeah,
and I think you went and saw it like the next day or
And
something.
then we saw it the next night and I was like, guys,
Right.
fucking masterpiece.
Yeah, we were like, we know. We already saw it.
I was like, guys, can we talk about this? Yeah, I mean, Dune Part 2, I think when I saw it, for a large part of this year, after I saw Dune Part 2 and after I saw Furiosa, I was like, that's 1 and 2. I was like, it's going to be hard for anything to surpass those, in my opinion.
Right.
And it held strong throughout the end of the year. And I think one of the things that I kept wondering about, I was like, is there going to be something that surprises me that overtakes those for like my 2 favorite movies of the year? And nothing did. And it was part of what we talked about of like the release calendar for 2024 being so light. I knew ahead of time all of the big movies that I wanted to see, and I was looking on the schedule and I'm just like, I don't think anything's going to surpass this. And I can tell you one thing about my top 5. One thing I struggled with, there were 3 movies that I was really going back and forth with putting in slots 4 and 5. So I had like 3 movies for 2 slots because my absolute locks were Dune Part 2, Furiosa, and Alien Romulus. I fucking love those movies unabashedly. Those were like top 3.
Right.
4 and 5, it was between Nosferatu, Civil War, and I actually not even briefly, for a while thought about putting Challengers in there. I really, really, really enjoyed Challengers. And I think I saw Nosferatu on Christmas Day. Because I think had I not seen Nosferatu, I think Challengers would have been in there. But I think I saw Nosferatu, and I'm like, Nosferatu is way more of a Zach movie than Challengers is. But that was part of what I was going back and forth with of like, do I put Challengers in there to make a more interesting top 5 because it's more well-rounded? It's not all just like, I mean, if you know me, you look at this list and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Those are Zach movies.
I kind of had the same one for Alien and the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Okay.
That was kind of my debate right there.
Because I know that movie is one that we came out of, and like obviously we were both huge fans of, but you were like, bro, that movie, like that might be top 5 for the year.
Yeah.
Like you were.
I was high on it.
Yeah.
I would say it's probably definitely sitting at 6, and then I would say Bike Riders would be at 7 for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of came out of Alien Romulus with a little more like, besides the ending again, I was like, this was actually a very entertaining and like fun alien movie to watch. I mean, not fun as in like, oh, giddy, but like I actually like thoroughly enjoyed it, and I wasn't like dreading it. Like I went in going, okay, I know there's going to be jump scares. Like, I'm not scared of that. It's just I could care less to go through it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really like that. It was just, I mean, it was a well done movie, and I really did enjoy it. So I kind of knocked Ungentlemanly Warfare down, but I mean, if I could have put them both in there, I probably would at 5 because Ungentlemanly Warfare, when I get around to watching again, I'm thoroughly going to just laugh and enjoy.
That's a really, really good movie. I like that movie.
And
a
like
lot.
the opening boat scene is one of the greatest opening scenes ever. Like as soon as it happened, I was like, "This is a great movie."
We all talked about that right after we got out of the movie, and then we talked about that on the episode that we did here on the podcast about it. And you and I both reiterated, we're like, that opening scene, as soon as it happens, and then they kind of like gets into like the credits and starts rolling you into the beginning of the movie, you're like, I know I'm gonna like this movie.
Right.
Like that opening 5 minutes, you're like, this is gonna be
like
good.
if this pace keeps up,
yeah,
I will not be disappointed.
Which is like a very, very underrated part of a movie. Like if you can have an awesome hook to your movie
Right.
like that. It's kind of like, reading a book or something that has just a mind-blowing first chapter. You're like, well, I'm fucking in now. Like, I'm hooked.
Right.
Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare has one of those where, like, within the first 5 minutes, if you're not digging that, then it's not going to be a movie for
Right.
you. But, like, we were all like, oh, yeah.
We were
is
sitting there
fucking
like,
great.
yes.
Here we go, baby. Here we go. So, yeah, like I said, I'm happy with my top 5. The only one that I think I was really, really debating on sneaking in there is Challengers. But I couldn't justify. I was like, really the only one that I would bump out for it is maybe Nosferatu, because I have to have Civil War in there. I feel like ending this year and not having Civil War in my top 5, I just couldn't bring myself to do.
Right.
I was like, it's too good of a movie for me to not have it in there. But I really, really liked Nosferatu. So
if I watched Gladiator 2 again, I might have bumped it up. But again, like you said, Dune and Furiosa is really hard to move.
yeah.
But I did thoroughly enjoy Gladiator despite our situation. To where if I watched it again and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
now that my stomach's not gurgling and my head's not pounding,
I
and
don't want to throw up.
don't want to throw up, and
Yeah.
I might bump it up, but I mean, it would take a lot because there's nothing wrong with Dune and Furiosa.
Well, and Dune is one of those ones I have since revisited Dune at home and loved it just as much the second time. Furiosa I haven't watched since theaters, but we bought it now and I'm gonna watch it here soon. And then Alien Romulus I've rewatched. I watched it twice
Right.
in theaters. So like a lot of these I'm like, that's a big marker of like, is a movie going to be in my top 5? Is like, is it a movie I want to revisit multiple times?
Well, and we've talked about like my
Yeah.
watchability. Like
Right.
when we do our brackets, it's all about watchability
Yeah.
usually for me.
Well, and like we were talking about for 2023, like you and I went and saw Oppenheimer 2 times in theaters.
Right.
Like that's a movie that's going to be really hard to not have as your
Right.
like your favorite movie of the year or like in your top 5, right? Like you go see
watch
something
it
multiple
twice.
times in
A
theaters.
3-hour-long
you
movie.
really like that movie.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, this was fun. This was a fun little exercise. I thought, we talked about it a little bit on one of our other episodes, but 2024, when I look back on it now, it was a very light release schedule, but I think a relatively solid movie year in terms of the releases that we were looking forward to that we saw. I thought were like pretty much across the board pretty solid. Like you can see, obviously in my rankings, there's a lot of 3 and 3.5 star movies, which to me are like pretty watchable, pretty good movies. Not a ton of like bona fide 5-star masterpieces in my opinion, but like a lot of movies that I'm like, I enjoyed this. This was a
Right.
good movie.
A lot of enjoyable movies.
Yeah.
I don't think a single movie this year I was like, I left and I was like, I wish I didn't see that. I don't think there
Right.
was a single one that
Yeah.
we went and saw
And
that I was
the-
like, I wish I didn't see that.
And the only ones on this list that I have ranked really low like that I was just really disappointed in, I saw those on streaming.
Right.
Like The Watchers I saw on streaming. Salem's Lot I saw on streaming. Joker Folie à Deux I saw on streaming. Horizon I did see that one in theaters, but then Rebel Moon I saw that on streaming. So like most of those I'm giving them low ratings and I'm like, these are not good movies, but I wasn't like that upset about it because I'm just watching it at home. It's a streaming service I already pay for. It's
Right.
not like I went to the theater and spent $18 on a ticket. So, had I seen Joker Folie à Deux in theaters, I would have been pretty upset. I would have been like,
Right.
this movie's fucking bullshit.
This was a waste of my
yeah,
time.
this is a waste of my time and money. But yeah. So thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yes.
Again, we're kind of experimenting
I
with
was
the
gonna
live
say,
stream stuff.
hopefully the audio is not super
Yeah, hopefully the
messed
audio's
up.
not
This
fucked
is
up, but-
kind of our trial episode. Everything will be at least set and ready to go for the next one for sure. But we had to do at least one test episode, and this was it. So hopefully it all worked out. I know the stream's going to have a little glitch in audio because I didn't set that up, but it was at the very beginning of the list. So hopefully it's not too long of any issues. If you do want to watch us, stream our episodes live, feel free to jump on the YouTube and follow the Just Browsin page. It has our normal logo on it, and then you guys can set up a notification and get that notification when we do go live.
Yeah, I will
and
say
jump in here and chat with us. And
those notifications will typically be, we record during like on weeknights
Right.
in the evening times, in like mountain time, anywhere between 7 and 10 p.m. mountain.
Right.
So that's, if you set up notifications and you want to tune in and like interact on the live stream, that's typically when those are going to happen. We usually save the like long episodes for weekends. We'll
Right.
get together on like a Saturday.
Or if you
Sunday,
just want to
but-
watch the episode, and like I said, the list is up. It's been up the whole stream, so you can at least see the whole list, the stars, and our top fives. And then like for future episodes, if there's anything to share, though, that we can put up on the screen, it'll be up. So
Yeah.
follow the stream. Again, sorry for any audio issues if we have them. We're just testing the waters and trying to get everything ready to go for this year, but I think we've got plenty of episodes planned. We probably need, if we want to do it again, do a 2025 movie preview sooner rather than later, before we're in the middle of February. And
that's kind of why I wanted to do this one before we get too far into the year. We're kind of mid-January right now, so it's a good time to do a 2024 look back. And I agree, we can crank out a 2025 look ahead. I will say I already did some pre-homework on that and put together another notepad in my phone on anticipated releases for this year, and I will say the list is much longer than it was last year when we did this, so we'll have more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, so we'll be back for sure with at least that, I would say, in the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
But then we said at the beginning of the episode we're about 143 episodes in, so we're 7 episodes away from 150. You clearly heard us talking about the dinosaurs and stuff like that, so we got some fun things in the works. We'll probably still do like a Super Bowl and a CFP one after that's done. And yeah, we got plenty of stuff coming up, so stay tuned. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll be back hopefully sooner than later with another episode.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.
Peace out.
All right, stream. Appreciate all the love. Anyone that stopped by, we will we'll have everything fully operational and running for the next episode technically. But thanks for tuning in, and hit that like button and follow for notifications so you can see when we go live again. But